excited to have you here, obviously. You know, it's been ever since we started talking, I guess a month and a half ago. It's like, man, this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah.
You're so, you know, you're a wealth of knowledge, obviously, so we could take this thing in a variety of different directions.
Right.
But you know, I think we kind of start and see where the conversation takes us.
Hey, listen, I'm so glad to be here. It's an honor.
Cool. Yeah, honor to have you here, man, for sure. So honor's all on this side. No, you know, I guess, you know, kind of, I wanted to do, you know, get an introduction. I want people to understand who you are and what you're all about, obviously. You know, I've been watching you more recently over the last probably 3, 4, 5 months and kind of got to know your stuff and saw you on the Sean Ryan podcast and got super intrigued from your conversation there and have learned a lot about what you're talking about as it relates to ancient civilizations and a lot of different topics. So, but first, I kind of want to establish like what is base reality, you know. And when I talk to a lot of guests, you know, out there, it's like okay, you know, where are you coming from? Like what is your perspective of the truth? Like what's actually happening right now? So before we get to maybe like introduction / childhood, like what is this world that we're living in? What's it all about?
Well, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that question, actually. So I think that we're not living in base reality. I believe that base reality exists, but I believe that we are living in an ancestor civilization. Okay. And what I mean by that, if you look at the video game The Sims or No Man's Sky, it was created by human beings, and there are people in those games. Now, just imagine you inject AI into that software, those beings become conscious and wonder who their creator was, where they came from, what's their purpose. And I believe that this happens over and over and over again, and that base reality could be Google's of universes away from us. And we could be just one of many, many, many civilizations that exist that were created by someone at a higher level than us outside of these dimensions. I know that some people it's hard to wrap their mind around it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it doesn't take away from who we are and the power that we hold and the knowledge that we can obtain and the divine nature of the universe. What it just says is the nature of this creation is that it's duplicatable, and we're in one of the duplicates. And I believe each universe is probably a testing ground or a proving ground of sorts. And I believe that our mission here is to collect data and information. So the way I see this society and civilization as a whole throughout the entire universe is if you look at the human brain, it's actually enclosed in darkness. It knows nothing, but it has friends. It has its sensory perception system, touching, smelling, feeling, hearing, tasting. And it says to its friends, can you please go out there and collect me some data so I can know what's going on outside? And then the brain says, okay, do this. And the friends go out and they collect this information. So when you touch something, you smell something, or you taste something, you yourself, that sensory perception of you doesn't really understand what it's collecting, the information. It collects it, but it has to transmit it to the brain for the brain to sort it out. And then the brain broadcasts a hologram, and you navigate in this third dimension based on that holographic projection that was based on collected data from your sensory perception system. And so I believe that if you go from, that's the micro, go to the macro, go to as above, so below, the universe itself is a mind. And every living entity in the third dimension is all doing the same thing as our sensory perception. We are all collecting information. How do we collect it? By living our lives.
Through observation,
through observation, through experiencing this realm, through the things that we do, feel, how we live this life, the lessons that we learn, and we send and transmit that data back to the source. And there's only one consciousness, and that is the source. And so I believe that the ultimate goal of the universe itself is to experience life subjectively through all of the entities that exist in this dimension throughout the entire known universe.
That are all interconnected. There's
all interconnected.
A lot there. So one entity, essentially, that we're a part of one collective whole entity.
Right.
And so we are essentially the aperture by which the universe experiences itself. It looks at itself through us is kind of what you're saying, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty mind-blowing. Yeah. So if you were to back out and take a look from everybody always says 30,000 feet. In this case, I think we're talking about like 30,000 light years. Then you might see a collective consciousness that begins to make a little bit more sense when you look at it from a connected standpoint.
Oh, absolutely. You'll start to see all the connections and all of the the clusters of galaxies, you'll see that they begin to resemble neurological connections like what you see in a human brain scan.
In the brain, yeah.
And you'll start to see that they appear to be synapses and everything else going on, just like the human brain. It is we're living in a fractal of the macro, and so when you scale it up again, we're talking about a conscious mind, and we know now that consciousness is not created in the brain. It's downloaded into the brain, and the brain connects to as many as 11 dimensions, according to the Brain Institute. Okay. And so we know that, well, if that's the case, then we are sending and receiving information all the time. And this information that we're sending, who's getting it? It goes into the grid, it goes into the membrane, the energetic membrane, and that data is then collected by the universe or consciousness to be analyzed. And I think that the ultimate goal, people say, well, what's our purpose here? I think the ultimate purpose is to find out how to transcend death, how to transcend death through knowledge by becoming an adept initiate. How many times can you come back and learn and relearn and become better and better and eventually learn how to bring heaven to earth? Through every civilization that exists throughout the entire known universe, how many have killed themselves? And only to maybe come back energetically and restart somewhere else or maybe on another planet. How many times will it take to obtain a golden age for each civilization? How many will destroy themselves? And then collectively as a whole, can this universe create a universal golden age? I think this is a proving ground and a testing ground, an experiment, a grand experiment to see where consciousness can go and how can it maximize itself and break the cycle of rise and fall.
So reincarnation is a part of reality.
Yeah.
And I love reincarnation because just as an idea, just because it forces us to, if everyone believed that reincarnation was a fact, then I think that we make different decisions as a species.
Yeah.
You know, if we know we have to come back to this place, then we might be treating it a little bit different.
Oh, I think we would. I think if people understood that energy can't be destroyed, it can only be transformed.
Right.
And you can come back, according to some ancient texts, the ancient sages talk about coming back over and over and over again, trying to learn what you didn't accomplish the last time, but starting from a base level with no knowledge or no very small memory of what happened prior. And I think some people even get reincarnation twisted in thinking that they come back as the same person, or they always come back as the same gender, or they always come back on the same planet. I think that's not accurate. I think you can come back in the past, present, or future, because from a higher dimension, like the fourth, fifth, or sixth dimension, for example, the past, present, and future exist all at once. And so energy, we know, can transfer itself to the past and the future. Just, look at tachyons, for example. And so we know that if that's really happening in science, then the reality is you can transfer anywhere in the known universe, in the past, present, or future. You can come back as anything. You might come back as some part of the life of span of a plant. You could come back as some of the minerals in a rock. And so we have to take the idea sometimes that our only form is going to be this human form. Because I don't think that's accurate.
So coming back as a rock with the ultimate goal potentially of becoming transparent to the light, essentially, right? I mean, so a big part of what you're talking about is spiritual awakening, from what I can gather, and just the importance of, when you talk about dying before you die. So the ancient Greeks would talk about if I die before I die, then I won't die when I die.
Right.
That was their whole thing, and essentially that means letting go and like finding your authentic self versus your egoic self, all of the ego, all the things that we hold on to. Letting that die and letting go of all of those identifications and conditioning and being your true, free, authentic, pure self, I think, is kind of what you're talking about as the goal of the human experience.
Yes,
is that
exactly.
fair to say? Yeah,
that's exactly it. Learning how to love everyone, learning how to see everyone as a brother and a sister.
Love it.
Instead of a potential enemy or competitor.
Yep.
Understanding that abundance exists throughout the entire universe, everywhere, at all times, and the lack of abundance mindsets create division and separation. And stop falling for divide and conquer tactics.
Right.
Left wing, right wing, and all these things.
Right.
And Baptist and versus Pentecostal, all these different things. It's all separation. And understanding and seeing that we are all just one, experiencing life in different perspectives. And how can we collaborate? How can we coordinate? How can we organize together to create a better world, even a better universe?
Love it. Yeah, fantastic. It's a beautiful point of view, beautiful perspective, and I knew I'd have a lot of fun talking to you because you don't get this from a lot of guests. You know, you don't, like, a lot of people don't have this level of I won't call it understanding, but I'd call it the perspective that you bring is super dynamic and super well thought out and just very, very impressive and intelligent. So yeah, this will be a fun conversation. So I saw on the Sean Ryan show one of the things that sort of, I think it was towards the end of the episode, I almost want to pick up there, and you he asked you about something to do with humans gaining consciousness and humans becoming and becoming conscious, and you got a little bit emotional at that point in time, and you wanted to take you didn't want to take a break. He said, hey, you want to take a break, and you guys took a quick break, and you guys came back and kind of started about something else, talking about something else. But clearly that's a really important part of your true self, who you truly are at your core, and that came through in the from an emotional standpoint with who you are as an emotional being. And so I want to just pick up on that and just ask you the question, why is that? Why is the spiritual awakening of the human species so important in your mind?
Yeah, and thanks for going back to that. I mean, I didn't think he was going to put that in the podcast. I thought he would cut that out, but I guess he kept it. But I just feel that, we have come so far in such a short period of time. And a lot of people have the mindset of, I've just had enough and I want to give up. But they're not looking at the big picture. It's almost like that zoom out 30 million light years, right? And take a look at the big picture. We have to understand, like, even just 100 years ago, we went from a horse, buggy, and carriage to now we can put remote control cars on other planets. We have probes that have left the inner Oort cloud and are in interstellar space. That's a huge accomplishment. And so, just that's technological, but just even spiritually, we've grown as well. Yes, we still have a lot of dogma. We still have a lot of things to overcome with, like, division and separation. But overall, if you look at the nature of even racism in America, is it perfect now? No, I'm not going to lie and say it is. However, look at the growth, though. I right now can go anywhere. I can go into any restaurant. I can get on a bus. I can sit in the front of the bus. I can get on an airplane. So that just shows there's growth there. Is it where everyone wants it to be at this exact moment? No. But instantaneous gratification is an illusion.
Right.
Things take time, and there's a process to this. We have to have patience. The thing about people is we don't live that long. We used to live a lot longer, but right now we don't live that long. 80 to 90 years old is like you had a great life. And so moments are fleeting because people aren't taking time to enjoy every single moment. They're not taking time to smell the roses and appreciate and have gratitude for what has been given to them. They only focus on the negative a lot. And so the negative, it builds up, and it feels like moments are fleeting. And it's never going to get better because I'm going to die soon, and it's going to, my next generation is still going to have the same problems. But what's really happening is you have to take time to focus on the positive. Focus on the things that are changing and be grateful for things that are affecting you in a positive way and your family in a positive way, and take time to smell the roses, and you'll begin to see, like, wow, things are really changing. Right now, it seems like things are getting worse. They're not getting worse. They're just becoming more obvious because we have technology like cell phones and tablets and computers, and TVs are not connected to the web. They're not even connected to cable TV anymore. Information is traveling instantaneously, so we're getting this influx of information all the time. People have to remember that we are growing as a civilization. We are growing as a species, and that the ultimate goal is to learn how to walk and then run. Right now, we're in the process of trying to climb up on the edge of a table. Just like a little baby. They climb to the edge of the table, and they take a step. After they take a step, they're going to fall. Right. We have to understand that's part of the process, and we have to learn how to trust that process. A lot of people don't have the patience, and they get nervous as soon as the baby falls. But we will get back up. We'll take another step, and eventually we'll take more steps. And walking is a series of controlled falls. That's the definition. And so we're in a position right now where we are going to eventually, we're getting close to being able to take that first step. But we just have to learn how to have faith in each other and trust each other and see past a lot of the dogma and divide and separation. And if we can do that, we can begin to work towards a real golden age. Sometime down in the future, 15, 20 generations from now, our offspring can be living in an absolute golden age. And the trick to this, and why I get so emotional about it, is we know that golden ages existed in the past. It's a fact. And they always rise and fall. Well, there's nowhere written that I've ever read. I've read over 1,000 scriptures, papyrus, cylinder scrolls, ancient texts from all over the world. There's nowhere written that has ever said we have to fall. So can we get to a golden age and maybe sustain it this time? And that's it's a huge thing to try to accomplish as a race of people on the planet. But I think it's possible because anything is possible, because we live in a universe where all possibilities exist at once. So why can't we focus that and make that our possibility?
Yeah, love it. Yeah. So how do we do it? You know, I mean, how do we get there as a species? I mean, you know, for me, it's like, have you read any Eckhart Tolle by chance? You familiar with him?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Incredible writer, man.
He's mind-blowing, right?
Yeah, powerful.
Yeah, I think for me, his two books are the two most powerful books that have ever been written, for me personally. They totally changed my life. But for me, so how do we get there as a species? Like, how do we start to treat each other better? How do we start to, I think it starts with trying to identify what it is that makes us treat each other poorly in the first place, and a lot of times that's identification with something. So I identify. You said it earlier. You know that we are life. We are at that's where I try to identify is at that top level. I am life. I am spirit. You know, and you go down to a level below that, and you've got all this man-made stuff. You know, you've got nationality, you've got race, you've got religion, you've got political party, you've got college sports fan, you've got all of these things that humans identify with. Even sex could be, male female could be something that people are you can get overly identified with. And as you take these things out to the extreme, they go from identification to attachment to addiction. And when you become identified with, when you become addicted to a race or to a religion or to a political party or to anything, then it makes you a separate fragment from other people. It makes you cut off from that collective whole of other people, and it makes you lose compassion for other people. And so for me, the core of it starts with understanding who my authentic self is, who I truly am at my core, and that is not it's not a religion. It's not a belief system. It's not it's not a something that it's not the vases that I collect. It's not like it's not a car. It's not a job title. It's not any of that. It's not my business. It's not any of that stuff. Who I am at my core. And I think that once we identify with that stuff, then it takes us down that path of separation as a species. So that's my perspective. I wanted to hear what your perspective is as to like how do we transcend the division that we have as a species.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head too. But we have to really begin to unlearn and relearn, because some of what you said was when we're born, we're given a name, a race, and a religion, and we spend the rest of our lives defending a false identity.
Right.
We don't really know who we are. The average person doesn't really understand who they truly are at their core.
Right.
They only know what they've been told to be. Even their name was given to them. They didn't come up with their own name. It was given to them. So now I'm Billy Carson. Well, who's Billy Carson?
Right.
Where does Carson come from? Where's Billy come from? I didn't pick that name. It was given to me. Now I live my life defending that name.
Right.
You see?
Right. Yeah.
So at our core, we have to rip all that away, and we have to begin to understand and truly realize who we truly are as a person. Who am I? What are my likes? What are my passions? What are my desires? And just take away all the dogma, all the religious input, all the schooling input, right? All the political input. Rip that away and begin to see who you would truly be at your core. And then you have to learn how to love yourself. There's too many people walking around wanting to love some group or some nationality or some race. They don't even love themselves yet. They haven't spent any time with themselves. I take myself on dates, okay? I spend time with myself. I post a picture. I'm at the game. I took myself on a date. I'm at the movies. I took myself on a date. I'm trying to show people it's okay to be alone.
Right.
It's okay. When you first start off going to inner space and spending time with yourself and begin to love yourself, and then the next thing is forgive yourself. Stop waiting for an outside source to come and forgive you. Stop waiting for deities and people and this and that. Learn how to forgive yourself. Remember what it was you did. Learn how to grow from that, and now you've forgiven yourself. You've actually spent time with yourself. You're in love with yourself. You're happy with yourself. Now, man, what's out here? Now you take that same aspect as a fractal of yourself, and you then replicate it on the outside. now you begin to glow. You begin to attract people into your life, and you begin to see everyone as love and light, not as hatred and darkness. And you begin to try to collaborate with people, and you see people for what they are, and you can then talk to people in a way that will get them to begin to realize, yeah, we're just all one.
Right.
And so it's this slow process of reaching out to people and showing people, hey, I'm here for you. I love you. You know, I'm here for your support. You know, how can we collaborate? How can we organize? How can we, you know, you're not going to be friends and lovers with every single person, but you want to show people that I don't hate you. Right. I'm not against you. I might not agree with everything you say or think, but I'm here as a person that's willing to accept you for who you are. And if everyone begins to drop and spread away from all these religious concepts, all the dogma, and all these I call it politricks.
Yeah.
This world will be such a different place almost overnight. And it's a hard thing to tear away, because now when you're talking about tearing away religion and politics, you're talking about tearing away complete belief systems. That hurts, and that takes a lot of time. And
because people are so attached to that as a part of their identity.
Yes,
because they've had it since they were children, and right. And it's, how do you take away a piece of me? It feels like for them they're taking away a piece of themselves. In reality, you're taking away a piece of the ego.
That's right. The ego is strong, and it wants to stand strong. It wants to stick its chest out, put its head up, shoulders back. Yeah. And you're breaking the ego down, and that hurts them psychologically, and even sometimes physically it hurts. Yeah. But if a person can get past the point of allowing the ego to be broken down and to remove that dogma from their life, they will see this life as a totally different way. They'll see people a totally different way, and people will begin to love one another, which is the key. And when you love somebody, when you love other people wholeheartedly, you then begin to create this paradise, because love attracts. It attracts. So instead of chasing after making this world a better place, we begin to attract creating a better place, a better world for ourselves. And right now it's like chasing a carrot. Yeah. You know, and you're never going to catch. It's like a greyhound on the dog track. It's never going to catch the little rabbit. Right. But when you begin to operate in that different frequency, the frequency of love, then all of a sudden you begin to attract. You begin to manifest the reality as you begin to attract more and more people that gravitate towards you with the same frequency. And all of a sudden you get this mass collective on the frequency, and then you have this shift, this spontaneous shift. We just have to get to that magic number of people that are resonating at the same frequency, and the whole world will shift.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Yeah, one of the things that we talked about at dinner last night was the voice in the head. We talked about a lot at dinner last night. We could have recorded dinner last night.
That was great.
Yeah, it would have been a great podcast. But the voice in the head, and being not being the voice in the head, but being able to observe the voice in the head. And that's something that is just so incredibly powerful, and it's just such a shift in your entire mindset. If you can just start to know that that's not who you are, that's just a tool for navigating this place. Just like you're not your body, you're not your voice. You are a spiritual being. I'm not a human having a spiritual experience. I'm a spirit having a human experience. And,
correct.
And so to be able to really listen to that voice in the head, and listen to, essentially it's just conditioning. It's your past coming into the present moment that you're just carrying into the present moment. And so, curious your thoughts on that, but that's obviously, people are going to be thinking, well, how do we get to this? How do we accomplish this? How do we get to that next stage? Because evolution, we're pretty well evolved as it relates to physical evolution. The next phase for humanity is spiritual evolution. It's consciousness evolution. So, I think that a huge part of that is understanding that we are not the voice in the head, that we are the ones who have the ability to observe the voice, which is essentially our past conditioning.
It's a fact. You hit it on the head again. We are not our thoughts. We are the observer of our thoughts. And when the person says, well, what does that mean? Well, think about something and then begin to realize that you can separate yourself from that thought and even the action behind that thought. You can observe yourself. I'm going to pick up a cup, and then you can observe yourself picking up the cup and fulfilling your own prophecy, right? Right. And so you can, just a small metaphor, but you can begin to see how you yourself are not the thoughts. You observe them, and that because you can observe them, which means you can hack them and change them on the drop of a dime. You can even catch yourself slipping. Sometimes I get really worked up. I got a situation, I got some haters, some trolls or whatever. Yeah. I catch myself, and I may rant for a minute or two, but then, I say, I see myself, I'm going down the wrong track. The frequency is dropping.
Right.
Let me sit back. Let me take a deep breath. Let me focus on positivity. Let me think of something grateful that happened to me in the present or in the past. Let me shift my brain-heart coherence. Let me shift my frequency of my cells and my body so they can celebrate. And then all of a sudden, I change my frequency and I'm back to who I am. But if I wasn't able to observe my thoughts and realize I'm going down a dark path, I can let that consume me.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, I'm going on for weeks, months at a time. And before you know it, years go by and I'm getting worse and worse.
Right. It's created a mental illness. I mean, it's created a mental illness. Like you are becoming, when we do that, and we all have gone, and so to break that off, essentially, like right when it starts to happen, and to be able to observe that voice, like immediately, is the cure to really all mental illness. Like, I mean, you know, and you can let that go on for, like you said, weeks, months, years, you know, whether it's resentment or whether it's, you know, regret or depression or anything that's backward looking, all of those rearward looking emotions, you know, we can cut those off by just being present in the present moment and observing our minds and not carrying the past into the present moment. And it's like so powerful.
Yeah, it's really powerful. You can, if a person tries this and begins to work on this, focus on making this something that's a priority in their life, they will see the change in their life almost instantaneously, because they will catch themselves all the time. You'll catch yourself 4 or 5 times in a day getting ready to shift or do things that you know are going to create a negative vibration, a negative frequency, a negative action in your life. I tell people all the time, think about something, all right, and then think about the action you're about to take behind that. And then send your mind into the future and see what the outcome is going to be before you get there. And you'll see the outcome's not favorable. So what do? You change the thought process. Then you change the action to a better action, and then send your mind to the future. You'll see a better outcome. And so, you know, it's something as simple as doing that can change your whole outcome. It can change your whole paradigm. You know, I had a person that was really attacking me online recently, and I just came to the point where I just realized, just let it go. I let it go. And I feel at peace. And there's no need for me to be passive aggressive or find a way to get this guy. And I'm just like, I just came to a point in my body, and I just said, I'm observing myself.
Good for you. Yeah.
It's agitating me to the point where I'm affecting myself physiologically now.
Right.
Which is giving me dis-ease, which will turn into disease, and then I'll push up daisies.
Right.
Releasing it, but you can't get to that point if you're not observing your thoughts. I had to catch myself.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's like, why do we carry thought into today, like thought from yesterday, you know, like the past, like all of the conditioning, all of the beliefs, all of the, you know, like it's just that we wake up in the morning and our mind turns on, and it's like we have everything from yesterday. We have our regrets, we have our, you know, we have our past, we have the emotions, we have I don't like this person, you know, or I'm this person, or, you know, I'm identified with this topic. I mean, we just consistently every day as a species, we wake up and we bring the past into the present moment. And it's like, how much of this system of that we find ourselves in, you know, as people, as Americans, you know, as just humans, that's just completely unnecessary, you know, that we could just let go and just feel so much lighter and more just free.
Yeah, like you said, feel lighter.
Yeah.
Because that's the actual feeling you get. You feel like I felt so much lighter.
Yeah.
I felt like I released a burden from myself once I let it go. You know, by observing it and realizing the path. I sent my mind into the future to see how bad this thing can turn. And I said, no, that's not for me.
Right. Good for you.
That's not for me.
Yeah.
You see, and the lightness, it's just this exhilaration. And so that's why it's so important for people to realize, like, wow, you can really shift and change your whole paradigm just through conscious thought.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. For me, just personally, a couple of the big ones were the shift happened when I realized I was not my mind. You know, and when I realized I was not my mind, I stopped listening to my mind. I mean, I stopped listening to it when it told me what to do. So when it told me to go get a glass of wine, you know, or when it told me to stop at Starbucks in the morning to get coffee, you know, or to little things, big things, but alcohol was a big thing for me. And so it's like, you know, I feel like most of Americans are in some stage, either from identification, attachment, or addiction, addicted to alcohol. You know, maybe it's small, maybe it's at the extreme, but most of our minds are addicted to alcohol. When we realize we're not our minds, we're no longer addicted to alcohol. Like we can just stop listening to the voice in the head immediately, and there goes that mental illness. There goes that addiction. You know, there goes that whole thing. And so powerful for me. I've been able to drop so many just bad habits over the last couple of years, 2 years really, since it's a major awakening to realize that you're not the voice in the head. It can completely change your life.
Right.
But it still does pop up. Like, I mean, it is there to help us survive to a certain degree, right? And so, like for me, driving to work, like driving to and from work, and all this crazy traffic that we got outside, you know, it's like that's a great opportunity that I get every day to observe my mind. And it's like, you know, you can either catch it right away and be at a, you know, be like, okay, well, that's the voice, and be at a state of peace, or you can let it go for 5 minutes and you find yourself driving 90 miles per hour, weaving in and out of traffic, you know, because it's like, you know, you get to the point where you are your mind, and it is controlling you. And you see that on the road with other people, when other people get road rage and, you know, they're driving like crazy. And like, so, you know, that's been another way that it's been able to help me personally, has just been through the recognition of, hey, I don't have to, you know, this person that just cut me off, like it has nothing to do with my false self. They didn't cut me off, and it wasn't my space in front of me. I was identified with the space in front of me.
You owned it. Right?
I thought it was mine. Yeah, it wasn't mine. It doesn't have anything to do with me. So, you know, just letting that go is just such a powerful thing.
It is, definitely. And, you know, that voice in your head can be so powerful, because some people relate that voice in the head to God, for example. But I think over time, just as people begin to really develop consciously and grow spiritually, if they're creating that direct connection with Source, that voice morphs from this deep, bellowing guy's voice to their own voice. And eventually you begin to understand that there's really two voices. One is the voice of the observer, which is you saying, no, I'm not going to do that. And the other voice is the voice that's telling you. It's this yin and yang going on inside the body, inside the mind. But we ultimately have the ultimate say-so, because it's a free will universe. And we can direct our own path, and we can create our own future in our own reality tunnel based off of our observed consciousness. And then we can direct this body. We can animate this body to do what we want it to do, which is what you were talking about. A lot of people think that the body and everything else has control over them. It's the flip way. It's not that way. We have control over it.
Right.
It's just a decision we make, either yes or no. It's like going down a fork in the road. Do I go down the left fork, or do I go down the right fork? I know it's down there. I know it's down there. Which one are you going to choose?
Right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And we also we also think that other people, at times, unconsciously, we think that other people have control over us and our mental state. In reality, nobody has control over our mental state. Only we have control over our mental state, you know? And it's like, this person made me so mad. They made me so angry. I can't believe they did that. That's all in my mind. I'm creating all of that. And it's just a mental turbulence that I'm creating within my own mind. They don't have any power over me. So it's a big one. Well, this has been a deep opening start to this conversation. Absolutely love it. Good to dive into consciousness conversation with somebody who really understands it at a deep level. So thank you.
I appreciate you too, man. It's a great two-way communication. I love it. You know, it's just interesting to hear a perspective of another person that's really, you know, resonates with what I believe in.
Good. Yeah, same here. Yeah. I don't even know if it's, so for me, I don't even know if it's a belief. Like, I just feel like this is the nature of reality. Like, you know, this is like how things work.
It's an understanding.
You know? An understanding. There you go. Yeah, that you can have through experience. It really kind of requires no belief. You know? It's just, you know, it works. It's just, you know.
It just is. It just is.
Yeah. Well, let me start off with, we got deeper than that for more time than I thought, but I want to start off with a little gift here
wow.
for you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, man, this is nice.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey. Sweet.
Yeah, got a
Egyptian
couple of
pot here, man. You got a couple of them in here.
Yes, sir. Got you a couple of Egyptian 3D printed artifacts in there for you.
Oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's really in there. Yeah,
there's been a lot of requests for those 3D prints. So I've been kind of like, I got a day job, now I got a podcasting job, and everybody's asking if I'm going to start 3D printing these things. And I'm trying to delay that, but
thank you. Wow.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's a Limitless cup in there. There's a Bell's gift card in there. There's there's a good book in there, which I think you probably already read. But
I just saw a book in the corner here. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
You're familiar, right?
Totally. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The one I have is all broken and ripped up, so this is good now. I got a replacement. All right, cool. I got a nice clean version.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, you know, I think we could go a number of different directions next. You know, as we were talking at dinner last night, one of the things that I brought up to you was an episode that I recorded with Ryan, actually, called "The Day the Earth Stood Still," and I could see it in your eyes that you were intrigued by it. Let me just show. Just for the audience, what I'm talking about. But I think that between you and I kind of talking about this thing, we might be able to take this to the next level and actually potentially, get to how this could have happened in the distant past. So just for the audience, just bear with me as I kind of rehash this for a second. But the basic premise of it is that the Earth spins at about 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. And so you have all of this momentum of the atmosphere, and we don't feel the wind spinning at 1,000 miles per hour because we're turning along with it. But if the Earth were to slow down to not spinning, we would feel 1,000 miles per hour of wind. We would also feel that ocean water start to go from west to east onto every major landmass in the world. And so what if the Earth's rotation ever slowed down? That's kind of the question that sparked this thing. And it's like, what would the Earth look like today? And I think it would look exactly like it looks like today, actually, as it turns out, which makes the question interesting. Has it ever happened? If the Earth were to slow down, you've got all of this ocean water, which is traveling in this direction towards the west coast of every continent. And what we see is what looks like the remnants of some massive event where ocean water would have traveled onto land. And we see that because salt water creates salinization, and salinization creates desert. And so what we have on the west coast of the United States, a lot of desert, and we have what looks like potentially water damage. And of course, all of these areas are salt. This is all salt deposits. And so what that looks like to me is that ocean water settled here and then evaporated and left all of the ocean salt on the top of the land, on the topography. And you can see Salt Lake City, right in there. Like the explanation for Salt Lake City, I kind of like my explanation better, to be honest with you. Like, I think it makes more sense, like how that thing formed. But you see it, going up and down the west coast of every major continent, and you can see it. You can see it in South America. Again, salt deposits here. When you get down to this spot right here, which all of this water would have been coming in on this direction, and you can see this. If there were all of this land on top of Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, Belize, it would have been pushed from the west to the east, and you kind of see that. You see that smearing effect, happening right there. And, as you go down into South America, you see, again, this land up here is less green and less fertile. And all of that water would have been pushing into here. And down here, you have all of these, you have a ton of salt deposits along this river. This is all salt deposits on here. So, and it's almost like, I guarantee you there's some elevation change here where the water didn't reach. But then, you come down to here, and you've got the Andes Mountains. The Andes Mountains can get up to 14,000 feet tall, right? And so the water is not going to get past the Andes Mountains. If it was a 2 mile high, if you're talking 10,000 feet of water, then it's gonna bust up against these mountains. It's going to potentially settle in some of these areas, and again leave these salt deposits here. You've got a major salt flat right down here in this area, Salar de Uyuni, in this area, just in Bolivia. And so it looks like, if the water was pushing this way, it almost looks like it pushed and created this V shape here, and then, almost like crumbled, like if you were sliding you were holding down a piece of paper on a desk from the outside on two sides, and you just slid it towards the middle, it creates this crinkle effect. That's really what this looks like is happening with the land just being pushed from the west to the east. And then you have this smearing effect again right down here in South America, where it looks like all of the land, potentially could have been pushed out from the west to the east. If this mountain range was taller, you see this smearing effect down here. And then this formation, which is, crazy, because you have to think that if the water was going from west to east, it's of course going to be a perfectly flat ring at the equator, but then as you go down to the South Pole, it's gonna be turning like this. It's gonna be like making a circle around South America. It's gonna be encircling it, and Antarctica rather. Sorry, and that's exactly what you see with this little thumb-looking thing. Like it's pushed through. It looks like the land was at one point connected here, and it looks like the water has just completely pushed through, and goes around Antarctica, around Antarctica, and then that's kind of the the formation, and then again you have this massive body of water here in the North Atlantic Ocean, and you can just see how much salinization. I mean, this is of course all desert now, but you think about all of this water being pushed into the Mediterranean Sea. This top part would have been covered with an ice sheet, so it's not busting into there. It's all going to either be coming directly onto the land from the west coast of Africa, Mauritania, the Richat structure, being pushed into the Mediterranean Sea, and then potentially creating some of these lines in the sand, some of these big striations, which are supposedly from wind. These really don't look like wind, and and then you see there's salt deposits that are 12,000 feet. I mean, there's salt deposits all over from what looks like dried ocean water, all over Africa. And you continue to see these striations, these lines being kind of pushed out. Maybe that's if the Earth did speed back up its rotation, maybe the water was kind of drained out from the right to the left. Yeah. I don't know, but that, pure this is all speculation, of course. But then, you look at Emikusi, and, you look at the inside of Emikusi.
Look at that.
Salt at the top of a volcano.
Wow.
At the top of a volcano. So at some point, I mean, if this obviously hasn't erupted since prior to that event, or else it would have burned up all the salt, and it looks like what happened here was, again, all of this water,
you can see it,
just pushed around the top of Emikusi, which is like 14,000 feet tall, man. Wow. I mean, you're talking about just a ridiculous amount of water that would have been pushing through here and just burning down to the bedrock, and creating these striations in the sand. So there's a lot of evidence for this. And then you look at the Dead Sea here, and the Dead Sea sits between some mountain ranges, and the Dead Sea is 30% salt water. So if this had filled up to the top with ocean water, and since this event happened, the ocean water had just evaporated, then of course you would be left with a Dead Sea that has 30% ocean water. Of course it would be, and you see that in other other bodies of water as well. But that's obviously, when you think about all the water that would have been pushed through the Mediterranean and into this area. Yeah. And then of course, you look at these striations in the sand, that came down and were forced out this direction. And it's just that whether or not it happened, I mean, it's
very compelling.
Very compelling. Yeah. A lot of evidence for this all over the world. And I mean, we see Australia, which looks like west to east, and and you look at the salt deposits that you see in Australia. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
This is the best evidence I've seen of a global flood, other than different layers that have been taken from ice core collections.
Okay.
This is the best.
Yeah.
As far as a hypothesis.
Yeah.
Is it accurate 100%? We don't know, but the theory is pretty sound.
Yeah.
And you're talking about Earth slowing down on its axis.
Right.
To create this flow of movement of water and of course atmosphere. Yeah. Now, if you look at a lot of the ancient texts, like the Enuma Elish and the 7 Tablets of Creation, it reads like an astrophysics journal. Okay. It's talking about the creation of our solar system and the planets in our solar system and the orbits of the moons and everything, how each planet captured its own orbit around the sun. It even talks about a very chaotic time period when, during the process of forming this solar system, there was rogue planets coming in and out of our area. Now, modern science, modern astrophysics, and peer-reviewed science talk about the fact that they believe that a massive, massive planet roamed right through our solar system in ancient times, possibly millions of years ago. And they say that this thing would have had a major effect on the planets. And of course, they see now that Uranus and Saturn switched locations. They can tell this by doing a rewind, astrophysics rewind. They can see that, they were in different locations. So, and we can see that Uranus is turned on its side and its equator is going north to south.
Okay.
instead of, east to west to east. And so it's really amazing. So this thing came through and really adjusted the orbits of planets in our solar system. And then also, when you read it, you discover that there was a moon of another planet that was orbiting another star that collided with this planet named Tiamat. This is before Earth even existed, according to the tablets. Once this Tiamat exploded and broke into magnificent chunks, one big chunk swung away with the water, the atmosphere, organic material, and everything else. And it, of course, it was hot as a rock on fire, but it recoalesced. It separated the waters from the waters, which is the same term used in the Bible in the creation of our planet. And by God said, we separate the water from waters. But this was really comes out of the Enuma Elish, and it's talking about this huge chunk that swung away and recoalesced as what we now call Earth. It pushed Venus closer to the sun, and that pushed Mercury closer to the sun. So it took its third orbit around the sun, and Venus and Mercury had to get pushed back gravitationally, which is why Venus is so close to the sun. And it makes a lot of sense, though, that because of this potential slowing down, all of a sudden we found out that the moon got put into place after this collision. The moon got put in place around Earth, which would have gravitationally affected Earth's rotation on its axis, affected its wobble, stabilized the wobble. And of course, we know that it's in this synchronized, geosynchronized orbit, which means that as the moon spins, the Earth spins at the same speed. So this is almost like it's put there to completely lock Earth down and stop its erratic movement and stop its erratic seasons and everything else, so that we can actually flourish. Without the moon, we wouldn't be able to flourish. And so, but you add the combination of a planet coming through here, whether it was before or after, we don't know, but then also the moon being put into place. And I do mean put into place. I think gravitationally it might have got tugged along, but when you analyze the moon, there's no other moon in our solar system of that size. And the perfect distance from the sun to create a perfect solar eclipse, the perfect rotation on its axis to only show us one face, and the perfect position to harness the Earth's axis to make sure that it doesn't wobble and to make sure that it's at the perfect speed and everything else for life to sustain itself long term. And of course, also capture any rogue debris that might hit us and affect us. And so it's like a shield. It's like a protection shield.
It's perfect. It's exactly in the right place. It's exactly the right size. It's the right rotation. I mean, it helps with the tides. It helps with everything. And it makes, I want to talk about the moon in a second. But yeah, the theory is not something that I've heard anyone else talk about anywhere, that the Earth's rotation has slowed down, and that's what caused that could cause a lot of the geological features that we see. Like, I've heard nobody talk about this. And so I put out that episode last year, and of course, I got a baby channel, nobody's paying any attention, but I feel like this is something that could really be something big. Like,
this is big. Because I can see just by putting the moon in place how it could slow down the Earth's rotation on its axis and stabilize the wobble, which would have caused, just stabilizing the wobble alone would have caused a global flood.
Right. Exactly.
Just that alone would have closed. So it's an amazing theory, an amazing hypothesis, and I think it's worth looking into.
Agreed. The moon, the placement of the moon. Like, when I made the episode, I was thinking, okay, it could be a pole shift, or it could have been Planet X or something. And it didn't hit me about the moon until I was actually watching some of your work, and I was like, maybe if the moon actually was placed here, that thing behind your head, with the spaceship in the middle of it. Maybe if the moon was placed here, that could have taken a day from 22 hours to 24 hours. We're told that the old day is 22 hours long, and that's obviously faster than a 24-hour day, and maybe the moon placement here could have slowed down that rotation enough to have all of that water come up. Now, the moon's crazy, man. Let's talk about the moon for a second.
Oh, man. So, the moon is crazy.
It's crazy, right? Yeah. So, I mean, when you think about like the marks on the moon, so it's hit with all these meteors, and none of them go below a certain depth.
True.
Like they're all like you would think if you have some massive object like what's the biggest crater on the moon? The Tycho. There you go.
Tycho crater.
Tycho, yeah.
Tycho crater.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've talked about Tycho crater before.
Have you? Okay. Okay. Yeah. It's crazy, and you see these lines, these horizontal, there they are. Yeah, these lines coming off of that crater. But still, I mean, that obviously was a massive impact, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, but to see those lines coming off of that crater is like, oh my God, dude, something massive hit that. But still, it's not any deeper than any of the other. They're all within a specific, you know, depth. But if you think about like a rock like the moon, like something hitting it that hard. The other thing that's interesting is, and I know you know all this, and but when you drill down into the moon, the rocks on the surface are older than the rocks that are down deeper when you drill down to it. So why would the surface rocks be older unless they were digging it out, unless they hollowed it out, you know, at some point in time? And then you think about the ringing that happened when we dropped the in the 70s, and we set up those sensors to measure, you know, what would happen when we dropped the rocket off and it landed on them. It was ringing for hours, which would indicate that it's hollow, that there's something, you know, it's so big, as you pointed out earlier, that you know, that no other planet has a moon that's that big out there in the sky. It perfectly, of course, eclipses the sun. I'm going to that eclipse in April next month. Can't wait to do that. But then, you know, I guess, gosh, I mean, there's so many things as it relates to the moon that are just like, I mean, you never see the other side. It's one rotation, you know, and so you're constantly just seeing the one side of the moon. And, you know, I guess lastly on that crater, and when you see those lines coming out from it, like, I wonder if, like, because there's no explanation for that's any good anyway, that it can explain how those lines were formed. Like what kind of like debris from, because it would have come from that impact. Like Tycho, that impact on Tycho would have, you know, obviously if those lines are all, you know, coming out directly from Tycho, then it happened when they were when something impacted the moon. So my thought on that, potentially, if the moon is hollow and it is like, and it does have a solid outer shell and something hit it, imagine the moon like on that spot when something hits it, almost acting like a balloon where something hits it and it comes in, you know, like on that specific spot, like it has this indentation on that spot as that meteor or object is coming in. And then all of that debris, if it were to shoot off into all sides, then that could explain the line that you see coming off of that meteor strike. Right. I mean, because if it's round and it's just hard and something hits it and it bounces up in all different directions, you don't get run out on a spherical moon. You don't get run out. But if it was indented and everything shot out and was like you know, expanding off of the surface of it, then you would see a lot of those things.
Right. You're talking about the ejecta. That's coming out. And what's crazy is, like you said, the depth of most of these craters are almost the same depth. And so it leads you to believe that there could be something there. So I formed a program or an organization called the United Family of Anomaly Hunters. And we download all these images from space probe data and rovers and everything else, and we analyze them. We've analyzed over 1 million images. Over 1 million.
Nice.
We have about 60,000 anomalies, not just from the moon, but from the moon, Mars, you know, Venus, Mercury, and many other moons in our solar system, Iapetus and so forth, Io. But what's interesting with the moon, we did a USGS.gov search, and we found a radar scan of the moon. It's a ground penetrating radar scan, goes about 30 meters beneath the surface, available to the general public. So we said, hey, let's download this thing. Chris Maroney was the one who discovered it. He downloaded it and we took a look at it. He made a great video about it. You can see structures beneath the surface. No Photoshop, no editing, no messing around with opacity or anything. Just there.
Wow.
There's structure. There's some structure that we don't know what type of material it is, but there appears to be some type of structure beneath the moon's surface. What is that doing there? And that also then would account for the ringing like a bell for hours and why the depth only goes so deep. This potentially could be a shell. And people say, you know what, we never landed on the moon. Yeah, we did land on the moon.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. But what they did was they showed you a combination of real moon footage and not real moon footage. And why would they do something like that? Because we went to the moon, but we lied about it, because the moon was a reconnaissance mission. We were going to send these guys up there because we know there's stuff up there, because they did several low lunar orbit missions and they saw what was there. We need to collect some of this debris and bring it back to figure out what the heck is that and who was up there and when. And so a lot of the moon's mission was really to covertly get this stuff and bring it back. And so we did go to the moon. Now, they sent another mission to the moon called the Clementine mission.
Okay.
Now, that mission, I knew from the time I saw the name that this device, this satellite, never came back. Oh, my darling Clementine, you were lost and gone forever, an old country song. So I said, oh, my goodness, they make it so, like,
it's
obvious.
So obvious. Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Let's not forget what this mission's about.
Oh, man. So I go, Clementine. I just started laughing.
Yeah.
I go, let me get the data. I go and download about 2 or 3 gigs of data. This is images from the far side of the moon that we have available to us. There's structures all over the far side of the moon. There's things on the surface that can't be explained that aren't rocks. And so I processed some of these images and put them out in some of my groups. But this device, this satellite, it crashed into something according to their own report, their own a report that they put out. It crashed into something and got stuck and never came back, of course.
Okay.
But I think they crashed it into it on purpose to see what was going to happen.
Okay.
But there's something going on. Now, when I think Apollo 10, I could be wrong with the number, but one of the Apollo missions, I think it was 10 though, they were going around orbiting the moon. And on the far side, they were out of comms range. Okay. Well, something hacked into their comms and they all started going crazy. This is on the black box recording. There's somebody playing music in our comms. There's music. Can you hear the music? Yeah, we hear it. What is that? There's music playing. There was music, almost like choir type music, chanting or something, playing in their comms until they got back into comms range again.
It sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? You hear that? That whistling sound? Yeah. Woo! Look at your... Yeah, it sounds like, outer space type music. Boy, that sure is weird music. No. It's a whistling, like an outer space type thing.
And so you have this, all this evidence. It's just circumstantial evidence, but when you put it all together, all of a sudden it begins to make a lot of sense. Now, in the ancient Sumerian tablets, 2 people talk about going to the moon, and they said they had to put on their eagle's mask, which is like, in my opinion, a helmet, because they said the atmosphere was rough. So they went to the moon, but they went there for a very, very, very long time. Then you have another account of this moon situation in the Sumerian tablets where one group, they were all relatives, but one group was fighting against another group and one lost, and because they had stole something, I can't remember what it was they stole. They stole something from one group and the other group retrieved it and got it back, but they were banished to the moon. And then you have the black box audio where you hear Neil Armstrong saying clearly, this is on the actual FOIA, they did a Freedom of Information Act request on the black box audio, which anyone can get now. Anybody can download the audio.
Okay.
It's been in documentaries. And he says, I bet the people down there never get out as they're orbiting the moon, looking for the landing spot in the Sea of Tranquility. So all of a sudden, it's all making sense. Something is going on that they know about that we weren't privy to.
Right.
And I do believe that a lot of it has to do with this ancient Atlantean civilization that existed on Earth, existed on the moon, and even on Mars.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, the original footage, the original audio recording from the original moon landing is somehow misplaced, right? I mean, it's like, that's a little scandalous. Like, how does that happen with NASA? It's like I picture like a bunch of guys like leaving work and they don't know where their keys are. They can't get home at the end of the night. Like, what are they doing? Like, they lost the something's going on.
NASA is a front for the secret space program.
And the reason why NASA moved everything from being government technology and government access to private corporations is so that they can cover everything up a lot easier, because too many questions came out in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And so, you know what? We're tired of this.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to keep giving up all this information and lying about what we're doing. What we're going to do is we're going to just start giving out private contracts, SpaceX, Blue Origins, whoever else, and we're going to, Lockheed Martin, whoever, we're going to give them these private contracts. Now it's inside of a private corporation, and we can't put a Freedom of Information Act request in for any of that information. We can't go to a private corporation and shake them down for what's going on. So our hands are tied as a public. There's nothing we can do. And so they were smart to do that, because now they can really easily cover everything up. Before it was a little hard. They even cut the live space feed to the ISS, so we can't see all those UFOs flying by the cameras anymore.
That was cut?
Yeah, that was cut a few years ago.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Everything now is processed before they give it to you.
Okay, interesting.
Too
I
many
don't think
UFOs.
I realized that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, man. And then this most recent thing, and I want to get to, Mars and then to the UAP phenomenon, maybe next. That's probably a good segue. But this most recent landing that happened on the moon, so when they announced that they were sending something to the moon and they were going to drill a hole down into the moon, I'm like, that is never going to happen.
No.
Nobody's ever going to let you drill a hole down into the moon. And so I guess it was like last week they said, well, yeah, the whatever it was landed, and it landed on its side.
Yeah.
And the mission is, it can't be completed. And it's like, yeah, that was never going to happen.
I remember China sent a rover to the moon about maybe 5 years ago, and it got stuck in debris. What they made a mistake. The rover sent back an image, and that image went public too fast before they can edit it. It was too late. So all that debris looks like wires and balls of string or broken metal all around the rover. What's that doing there?
Right.
Now you have this new mission that just went, and it's on its side. There always seems to be an excuse as to why these missions aren't working out the way they're supposed to.
Yep.
And of course, we haven't been there for a long time. Now, what is interesting is they put an array of dishes on the moon.
Okay.
And they've been transmitting from Earth to the moon via laser a communication almost on a daily basis for years. What are they communicating, and who are they communicating with? Why do we have to why are we sending communications to dishes that are on the lunar surface?
This is NASA. This is the government. This is the U.S. government.
This is NASA. Yeah. Nobody can get an
Nobody
answer.
tells us.
But they tell you this is what we're doing. But they don't tell you why we're doing it. Like, are we getting a response? Who are we talking to? The hypothesis is from mainstream is that they're just experimenting with high-speed laser transmission. But wouldn't you want somebody on the other side to confirm the data and maybe respond and see, two-way?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. Yeah. So, and then the Mars. So you've got a bunch of pictures back from there.
Oh, yeah.
I talked about the Face on Mars with the Snake Bros a couple of weeks ago, and we kind of got into that. And that one for me is like an unsolved, like it's still open book. I mean, NASA sent and, took a picture of that thing like whenever it was, I think in the late 70s, right? Yeah.
Late 70s, yeah.
And it's like a beautiful, perfect picture. And then, they go back in 1998, they wait 20 years to go back and get another picture of it. And it's like total Photoshopped, like 13 layers of Photoshop. And then, everybody realizes it's a Photoshop. And so they take another one in 2002, and it's again completely Photoshopped.
Yep.
Like, it's like, it's layers and layers and layers of Photoshop. And it's like, oh, well, we went too far on the 1998 Photoshop, so we're going to make it look a little bit better for this one.
I know.
And they haven't been back, and they haven't taken another photo of it.
No.
And it's like, why? Like, why? And they've got the freaking rover like driving all over the planet. Like, why not bring it to Cydonia or is that where it?
Cydonia.
Yeah. Like, why not just park it? Like, bring it up to its nose. Like, drive all over it. Like, let's see what it is.
It's huge. It's miles and miles wide.
Yeah.
But it's definitely there.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is Arthur C. Clarke, who was an author and also, I believe he was a scientist, in the 60s had come out with a book that showed a face on Mars.
Okay.
And astronauts climbing on this face. That was before the mission to Mars that took a picture of the face. And this guy, he knew so much. He understood that communication satellites, he's the inventor of the communication satellite. That's who Arthur C. Clarke is, and an author. He understood where we would be today technologically based on the abilities of a communication satellite. He was a big future thinker. I just wonder how in the world he knew about that face on Mars. And he drew it exact on the book cover. I have the original copy of the book.
Really?
It's mind-blowing how he knew this. So somebody had foreknowledge of this face, which is why they took a picture of it. They probably didn't think it was going to blow up in the media like that. But there's so many anomalies up there. Now, Cydonia, which means Cairo in ancient language on Earth, it's Cairo.
Okay.
Okay, so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So on Cydonia, it matches perfectly the mound on Earth at Avebury. All the structures surrounding have all been artificially made to be a reproduction of the area on Cydonia that has what looks like a 5-sided pyramid, a small city, and then a face. And it matches down to the millimeter. So it's really incredible because somebody here on Earth knew about what was going on Mars. Now, where can we make that connection? In the Atrahasis epic, or the Epic of Atrahasis, and in some parts of the Enuma Elish, the Anunnaki people, they talk about these beings named the Igigi. And they say
and these are Sumerian tablets?
Sumerian tablets, okay. Yes, Sumerian tablets. And they are available at the British Museum. Anyone can go look them up, and anyone can translate them because they were translated hundreds of years ago by George Smith and many others. So Assyriologists have translated them. They've been translated for a very long time.
Okay.
But they're in the British Museum, and the translations are available by going to the UCLA CDLI online cuneiform digital library. Okay. Say that fast 10 times.
Yeah, no. Not even one time.
So you can get this information and read it for yourself, is what I'm trying to say to people.
Yeah.
So you know that I'm not just going off the dome.
Yeah.
But you see this incredible connection that these Igigi, according to these people, were living on Mars and working on Mars, building a concurrent civilization, Earth and Mars at the same time. And they were laboring and doing the work on both planets simultaneously. They even left Mars and came to Earth to go against God, Anu. So Anu was the head god, or the head, quote unquote, leader of Earth. He was the father of Enlil and Enki. And these beings were so pissed off with the amount of work they were given that they weren't getting any breaks, and they were complaining about not even having women, that they fell from heaven to earth. They went from Mars to earth. This is what made it into the Bible. They went from heaven to earth to go against God.
Okay.
And that made it into biblical text, but it's really in these ancient tablets.
Okay. And there is scientific evidence on Mars of nuclear war, essentially, right?
Yes.
I'm not super familiar with what we collected and how we've analyzed it and why we know that, but can you educate the audience on that?
Sure. There's two ways. One way is by the Mars rovers collecting soil samples, and then also the satellite collecting upper atmospheric samples. So we know now from two different separate sources through science kits that are up there, are collecting these samples and finding out that we have xenon in the atmosphere and xenon in abundance in the soil.
Okay.
Now, this xenon is just not any type of xenon. It's weapons-grade xenon, which is a byproduct of a nuclear explosion. Okay. So we know that based on what we know about science on Earth, it appears that there was a massive nuclear war on Mars. And they call Mars the god of war. It's called the god of war for a reason, because in some of these tablets and texts, there was this war that extended all the way to Mars. And this battle in the heavens that's in the Bible. And the Greeks talk about the battles of the gods in the heavens, and the people from India talk about the battle of the gods in the heaven, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita. It's in all of these texts, the same exact battle happening. But it's these people that were fighting each other back and forth, and in some way, at some time, they got nuked.
Any idea on the time?
No idea on the time, but looking at the way that Mars, it seems to have had two pole shifts. The first pole shift happened when Tiamat exploded, because even now some mainstream physicists believe that Mars was a moon that orbited another planet. And they're judging this by its very strange elliptical orbit around our sun, that it was kind of released. One side of Mars is charred, the other side is very smooth. The charred side could have been the side that faced the explosion of Tiamat, which is why it charred. And then the weight of that impact shifted the axis of the equator. But then they're saying that based on the planet, they can tell from some of the samples that have been taken, it seemed to have started healing itself. All of a sudden, something came and shifted it another 10 or 15 more degrees. Now it's about a 45-degree angle. The equator's moved. They can tell there were two shifts of the pole of the equator on Mars. And they believe that that second one could have been a second geological disaster. I'm thinking the second one was the war. So many multi-millions of years ago could have been the first time Mars got damaged. And we know in the Igigi, they were talking about in the Sumerian tablets that Mars's atmosphere was kind of rough. You can live there, but they were saying that it was rough. Then all of a sudden, there was a second pyramid war in the text, and you never hear back from the EGG ever again in any more of the text. So I'm wondering if that second war maybe could have been as close as maybe 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, the amount that we don't know about our, you know, it's like, it's crazy.
So much we don't know.
Yeah,
Because what we've been told is just, you know, it's hodgepodge. It's almost like goulash. It's just stuff thrown into a pot, man. They just stir it around and say, feed this to the people.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, keep people calm. You know, nothing interesting has ever happened in the past, you know, million years. You know, it's just been peaceful and weather's been great, you know. You know, humans have been here humans have been here a minimum of 300,000 years, Homo sapiens as we know today, and potentially for a lot longer. And if that's the case and there were no cataclysms and there were no difficult times or, you know, dramatic population decreases, then I think that there would have had to have been a you know, a civilization at some point in the past that would have been, you know, mind blowing compared to, you know, how we think of our ancestors.
Facts.
So,
when we look into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, you discover that in there he talks about the fact that there was an advanced civilization that existed prior to the flood. His father tells him to go out to the land of Kem, which is now Kemet, which is now we call ancient Egypt. And he said, go to the land of Kem and carry out the plan that you know of. And so he gets his crew and he puts them into the great ship of the master. And that ship doesn't sail out in the ocean. It goes up into the sky until the planet disappears. Who has time to write this 36,000 years ago?
Right.
And then when he gets to the place appointed, it says, beneath him lay the land of the children of Kem, and he can begin to see temples coming up out of the mud. And so he descends down on the land and he opens his ship door. And as they're coming out, he calls them barbarians, come to attack him. He says, I raised my staff and sent out a ray of vibration, stopping them still as stone of the mountain. So he had a stun gun of some type that literally stopped them in their tracks. And then he says he began to speak peace with them and tell them he's here to help bring them back up to a higher level civilization. Now, so that statement there tells us that at one point in the past, they were already high level. They were already a high-tech, sophisticated civilization, and they had lost their way because of this geological disaster of this flood. And then he comes to bring them back up to a high level again. So there had been many high-level civilizations, I believe, on this planet prior to this incident that happened, and probably several global floods.
Yeah. I mean, why don't we talk a little bit on Egypt then, since we're kind of touching on that one a little bit. You know, we'll get to UAP later. You know, and I guess, you know, maybe Egypt might morph into a little bit of like some of the ancient megalithic structures that we see really all over the world. You know, which I'm assuming you're thinking that that's all connected. That, you know, that there's too many coincidences. That you look at the handbags, you look at the ancient stonework, you look at how it's all just these massive stones. All the oldest stuff is the most difficult, most impressive, largest, incredibly built stuff. But so, I mean, there's a number of different places that we could start. But you were in Egypt last year. You took a tour out there. You guys do it right, obviously. You know, from what your description of your tour sounds absolutely incredible. What are some of the sites out there that you are like, this is the evidence for ancient technology or advanced ancient civilization?
Well, you first have to stop at the Giza Plateau and just take a look at the Great Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, and the Bent Pyramid. Those three pyramids built there. Now, there's many more pyramids at the plateau, but those three in particular, they're just really amazing. Now, of course, the Great Pyramid, when you stand next to it, you know, over 2 million blocks of stone, you're standing in a time dilation bubble. There's so much mass there that if you're standing at the base of the Great Pyramid or inside of it, and somebody's standing 3 miles away, they're experiencing time different than you are.
Because of the gravity from all the stone.
Exactly, because of the gravity from all the stone. And you can feel the resonant energy coming off those stones because it's built on top of a magnetic field. It's on top of an ancient aquifer. And I've been down to some of those tubes, which are dried now. But that moving water underneath the base would create physiostatic electricity. And those ions would rush up into the Grand Gallery and they would get stepped up. The stepping up process is what's missing in that Grand Gallery. There's no more rods there, but there used to be something in those slots going up the Grand Gallery that I think would step up the power boost into the King's Chamber. And then from there would, you know, just somehow go up through the ceiling and up to the apex and then transmit energy around the planet, around that region probably. But it's you standing inside. When you get to that, you know that you're standing inside or around a gigantic stone machine, one of the largest stone machines that exist. And from my analysis of being able to go to the subterranean chamber, the Queen's chamber operates like a electrolysis unit to extract. Water would rush in there. If you had the water path the way that it was in the past before it dried up, a certain amount of water would go into the Queen's chamber. And the way it's set up, it would extract hydrogen atoms through electrolysis. And then you can push the hydrogen atoms into a certain area, and you can use that for many different purposes, all right? And it's like you're in a real machine. Yeah. And when you go into the King's chamber and you look at the giant stone box that's left behind in there, you can tell that that wasn't part of the original construction. They're calling it a sarcophagus. I can't even fit in it laying flat. My knees have to be bent a little bit, right? So it's not a sarcophagus, I don't believe. But a giant corner is broken off. And if you look right across the room, you can see that that huge piece of granite that snapped off has hit the wall and created the same indentation in solid granite. So that is a heavy, heavy explosion, a big explosion that happened in that room. So that room must have been a huge part of the power source, obviously. Maybe some type of fusion generator, I don't know. But it's a machine, and to me, it's one of the most incredible things you can ever be inside of and walk through and investigate and research. And then, of course, the bent pyramid, which they say they bent it in an angle because they couldn't get the angle right, and they had to.
That is the big. I mean, that's
come on.
Like these people knew what they were doing.
Yes.
Yeah, we measured. I had Ralph Ellis on the show, and we talked about that and how ridiculous it was. Because I mean, the angles are. If you take the bent pyramid and you just extend it down, and it's actually it would have the exact same footprint that the red pyramid has.
Right.
I mean, to the same royal cubit measurement. I mean, is not a mistake. I mean, they clearly did that on purpose. And the top half of the bent pyramid is I think it's it's an exact copy of the red pyramid in terms of its dimensions as well. So I mean, it's just a scaled down version. It's absolutely planned, 100%. Yeah.
When you look inside the bent pyramid, I've climbed all the shafts inside the bent pyramid. I've gone down 60 meters and up and around and crawled up. Total of probably close to 1.25 miles between going up and coming back out. And I've gotten to the top of the bent pyramid from the inside. Now, one of my old teachers told me that the bent pyramid, he was a homegrown Egyptian who lived there and played there as a kid, that the bent pyramid is a diagnostics tool. That one chamber will be full of water and another chamber half the amount of water, and a person would be put inside the center chamber, which is a huge one, which now has a staircase going up, a wooden staircase to help you climb up. And when the part at the very top that I would look over, that would be the part, then somebody would gong one of the walls, and it would create this resonance. And the person that's standing where I was looking over would be like a physician that would be able to see almost like an x-ray of the person's body to see what was wrong with them. So the bent pyramid possibly, according to him, is a diagnostics tool.
Wow.
And the Great Pyramid, we were talking about dimensions of the cubit earlier.
Yeah.
If you start looking at the cubit dimensions of the Great Pyramid, you can calculate the distance from the Earth to the moon, the speed of the Earth on its axis, the distance from the Earth to the sun, the circumference of the Earth, the circumference of the sun. You can calculate the speed of the Milky Way around the local cluster, all based on the cubits dimensions that are built into the Great Pyramid. I put out some work in my book that literally goes on every single mathematical computation and breaks it down for anyone to analyze and duplicate themselves, and it's all accurate. And so we're talking about knowledge that's been left in like a time capsule for us today. We're the ones that have the capability right now
to understand it.
To understand this. It's left behind for us.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, there's so many. We don't have to dive into all of them, but I mean, just a couple of the things with the pyramid. I mean, you mentioned most of, but when you look at the perimeter, the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid, it's exactly 1/2 nautical mile. And so, that's the nautical miles at the equator based on the circumference of the Earth.
Right.
I mean, so it's whoever built that pyramid, it seems like they knew the circumference of the Earth.
They knew it.
I mean, and you multiply it obviously by 43,200, you get the circumference of the Earth. But to have that nautical mile measurement embedded in the pyramid, And it's not only that, the length plus the width of the pyramid, 440 cubits plus 440 cubits, you get that 880 cubits. You divide by the height, 280 cubits, it's 880 over 280, that's 22 over 7, that's pi. It's 22 over 7 times 40, which was obviously a very important number for ancient people. The 40 appears everywhere. But to have that knowledge of it's essentially a pi-based pyramid in 2.3 million stone blocks. Like, what is going on with that thing? It's crazy.
It's wild. It's wild. And then you look at the base of the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan, Mexico, the same exact size of the base of the Great Pyramid at Giza. Now, the Great Pyramid at Giza, we talked about earlier at dinner, right? Yesterday at dinner, that it's the average height of all the peaks on Earth. And then the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan, Mexico, is exactly 50% the height of the Great Pyramid at Giza. And of course, the three pyramids in both locations are aligned with Orion. So again, we're seeing evidence of the same exact architect. And we know that Thoth says in the Emerald Tablets that builded I the Great Pyramid patterned after Earth's force, so that it too might remain through the ages. But then Thoth began to get into arguments and fights with his brother. He had ruled over the land of Kemet for 16,000 years, one man. His dad told him to go to the other side of the world and start another civilization. So he took some Olmecs with him to Mesoamerica and created the whole Teotihuacan, Chichen Itza, all those are there, Peru, all those areas were architected by him. He was the master architect. And the evidence of that text, you just look at the dimensions of the pyramids and the location and the orientation of them, and you can see clearly that it's the same architect. Both are built on top of aquifers, by the way.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I had Johanna James on. She was talking about the Osirian and how that thing is, that is old. That thing is old. Like it was obviously completely different construction than the Temple of Seti. That's carved right above it. I mean, just totally different. And it's all that massive, large granite. Really heavy stone. I mean, some of it's just massive stonework. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you've taken tours there, you visited that thing, you've gone down into it. I mean, aquifer, I guess, right? I mean, it's
a giant aquifer, but I believe it's a hydropower generation machine. That's obviously broken now, not working, not activated right now. But when you go down there, the first thing they tell you, you're going down to the Osirian temple. I didn't get a feeling of any kind of temple there whatsoever.
Right. This is not ceremonial.
No, I didn't feel it. But I felt like I was standing in a gigantic machine, and if it was on right now, I'd be dead. That's what I felt like.
Right.
Yeah, and the way it's designed, the way it's laid out, if you were going to like, what's that giant dam? That's Hoover Dam.
Yeah.
If you go to the Hoover Dam and look inside of some of the inner workings, it's so similar to the Osirian. It's like, oh my goodness, this really is somehow. This thing used a combination of a couple different sources, one of them being water, to generate power, possibly, hypothetically. We don't know. But that's what it feels like. That's what it looks like to me. A machine that literally generated power. It was a power source, in my opinion.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And it's ancient. We're talking 30, 40, 50,000 years old. It's really super ancient.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned last night, which I don't hear anybody talking about really, but you mentioned that you were going to go there this October, was the Valley of the Whales.
In
the
Egypt? Valley of the Whales. You were just talking about this flood. And how this water washed across the land. There's seashells and so forth in the desert.
Right.
Which brings more evidence to the fact that the water was here. This is definitely ancient oceans. There's a Valley of the Whales in Egypt, which I'm going to for the first time this year, where we're going to see gigantic whale bones of all ages of whales, even baby whales there, which really makes me think, how in the world do these whales get stranded in this area? Now, the hypothesis of mainstream is that over millions of years, this water drained and they just got lost and stuck here. I just don't believe that. I just can't wrap my mind around an intelligent whale not moving with the flow of the oceans.
Oh, there it is.
There you go. Look at that.
Oh my God, dude. That's crazy.
It's crazy, man.
That's crazy. And it totally speaks to that theory of potentially the oceans, I
think they got dumped off there. I don't believe that whales could be that dumb to just stay in a spot where they can't where they end up dying.
No, there's no scientist that ever predicts that you're going to find whales in the middle of the desert. Like they're making up shit to cover to create some story.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
When you have that many whales in different parts of the same area, it wasn't like they all try to beach themselves or something in one spot.
Right.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I've got to go investigate it. I want to get some samples of some dirt and sand and so forth. And I just want to see, figure out, even want to get, if I can find a way to get authorization for a piece of bone and get it tested. I want to get the age.
Yeah.
I just want to find out for myself what really possibly happened. I don't want to hear what they told me. I want to find out for myself. How close can I get to the truth myself? Right.
Love that. Yeah. And so they haven't been carbon dated yet, do you know, or are they?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
They might have, but they haven't made it public.
Yeah.
So I'll have to hire my own independent team to do it.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on the carbon dating that is within, like, the, I think the Bent Pyramid has that cypress in it. Yeah. And the Great Pyramid's been carbon dated. Like, I know people are gonna, bring that out as we know definitively that carbon dating is not, it's evidence of the age, but it's not definitive evidence of the age, you know. And I'm curious as to your thoughts on that whole.
Yeah, I have a problem with who's putting out the carbon dating because it's just a matter of changing a digit. Let's just change this digit. They'll never know.
Yeah.
Of course, there are some flaws in carbon dating, depending on how it's done, because it can be off by a few thousand years.
For sure, yeah.
But then again, whoever's putting it out, like I said, it's just changing one digit. All of a sudden, something that would have been 5,000 years older is now closer to our current era. So it's kind of like, man, I just like to do my own tests.
Do you think that cedar is original in the Bent, or do you think that was potentially added at some later date?
The cedar, now that's interesting because the cedar, some of it's, so half of the cedar tree is out of the stonework, and the other half is inside of the stonework.
Okay.
So it's like the stonework was built around the one half of the cedar in a lot of places.
Okay.
So it's like somehow it's built into the structure itself. Now that's pretty interesting. So that's why I want to get a piece of that with authorization and test out that and see what I can find out for myself.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if that was added later, or if it was, that would be an amazing thing to do, to embed it into stone.
Yeah.
But again, they had maybe some technology that we just weren't privy to or we don't know about.
Right.
But some of it's so embedded into the stone, it's visible, but it's like half of it is inside of the stone itself. And it's gigantic columns of cedar. It's really like, what the hell's going on? You really, just want to be like, I wish I had a time machine to see this process.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about blocks that are stacked, and you have stacked blocks, and then you have this cedar tree integrating into stacked blocks. How? Wild.
Yeah, wild for sure. Yeah, the pyramids are crazy interesting. And I know you mentioned you're having Chris Dunn on in a couple of weeks, and that'll be great. Like I mentioned, I had him on his episode 2. Nice. The thing that got me with Chris when he was talking about the Great Pyramid and that being a power plant, his thing is, I'm an engineer. This thing has a function that it's performing, and so what is that function? Well, maybe it's producing power. Yeah. And so, but the thing that got me was just that whole, like those copper tubes at the top of the Queen's at the Queen's chamber. Then you got the shafts that go up north and south, and then you have those copper tubes that are like, and then there's writing in there. It's like painted writing that seems to be like an instruction manual for how to tie those things. Yeah. It's like, what if that's a tomb? Yeah. Like what? Like nobody would ever see that. Nobody would ever get up in there. No, I mean that's obviously performing some type of a function. Yeah. Like I mean
it's a set of instructions.
Yeah.
And we know that there have been little remote control cars that have been put into very small shafts, and they hit doors, and some of those little small doors have been pulled down, and then behind those doors are the symbols for electricity, from positive and negative.
Can't bring store, right?
Yeah. So we know that this is a machine. It's a machine. Yeah. Without a doubt.
Yeah. It seems like, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, that one's crazy. Anything else in Egypt before we kind of, move on to next?
Still another amazing site is the Temple of Dendera. I'm still amazed by that. But even more than that, it would be the Serapeum. Yeah. And the Serapeum, in my opinion, is Enki's halls of Amenti. And these ancient texts and tablets talk about these halls that were underground. Thoth says he has one underneath the Great Pyramid, which those halls were found about now 5 or 6 years ago underneath the Great Pyramid, but they were empty. But those same identical type of halls were discovered in the Serapeum, which aren't empty. They have these magnificent 600 to 1,000 ton stone boxes made of crystal diorite and crystal granite.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They're still giving off higher than background level radiation today. Each one of these boxes, they're perfectly smooth on the inside. They're 90-degree angles, perfectly level. And the lids that were closed, when we tried to open them, you had to blow them up to get them open. You couldn't just open them. We couldn't find a way to open those lids. And some were open. Now, who had the power and the capability of even opening one of those lids? That's the big question. Now, in the Emerald Tablets, though, talks about using these as rejuvenation chambers. And he would put bodies, his own bodies. He had clones of his body or different bodies that he said he would fashion. And he would put them in each one of these stone boxes. And he would allow them to rejuvenate for 100 years at a time. Now,
so he's talking about the Serapeum prior to when the Serapeum was supposedly even built then, because because those Sumerian texts are like 32 to 3,500 BC.
Yeah, well, this is coming from the Emerald Tablets, which is 36,000 years old.
Okay, right,
even older.
Yeah. So he's talking about. So how does he identify him? Like, what is his?
He says his father goes down into these halls, and his father, he calls him Thought Me. He's also Enki, Enki in the Sumerian tablets. And he goes and he sleeps, but he's still alive. And he's recharging his bodies in the halls of Amenti. And then Thoth goes into his own halls of Amenti underneath the Great Pyramid, and also in other places. Yeah. He doesn't specify what the other locations are. Okay. And in these boxes, they have the capability of transferring their consciousness from one body to another. And so they would leave a used up body in one, let it rejuvenate. What better place to leave your body than inside of one of those 1,000-ton stone boxes that nobody will ever be able to open or break, and underground, and then walk amongst men, but he said, unlike a man. And then he would, when that body got worn out or tired, he would come back and put that body away and transfer his mind. So this is also, when you go in this, you realize it has the capability of being some type of power transfer system in between these halls, these nooks that are in there. And each one of these halls are so compact and so small that the stone box can't be navigated in there because they're too massive and they're too megalithic, they're too heavy. They can't take and build them there because you need 2/3 of the stone more to actually cut it down to make that actual container. So these were either teleported in there or manifested there, one of the two. Some way that we just don't understand. They were materialized or teleported there. And they utilize these stone boxes, and according to them, to be able to revitalize bodies, their own bodies, not other bodies that were stolen, their own bodies that somehow they say they fashioned or created their own bodies so they can walk amongst men.
Yeah. Incredible. So, like, what is the explanation for how those actually got there? Like the mainstream explanation?
The mainstream explanation is they wanted to put bulls inside of these, and they buried bulls. Yeah. Right. There's no bulls that have ever been found. Right. There was a farce of a story that was kind of made up that one had a bull, some bull bones in it, and even that fell apart. Right. And the mainstream archaeologists in Egypt and some other guides there, some of the best guides will tell you it's not real. Yeah. And fortunately, I have a very good connection with the people of Egypt and with the people in charge of antiquities there and everything else. And that's how you know the bull story is just a farce. Yeah, it's bull. The bull story is bull. And these things are so clean on the inside, you can eat off the floor inside of these containers. And like I said before, they're still radioactive. They're still giving off a significant amount of energy. Yeah.
So how would the ancient people have been able to take if it takes us dynamite, and maybe this was 100 or 200 years ago or whatever, but if it takes us in the 1900s or 1800s dynamite to take one of the lids off of these things, I mean, do you think they were using sound, or do you think how were they able to maneuver the lids? Because the whole box is made out of one piece of solid granite.
One piece.
Like it's one block of granite. And like that's, if we were to make these things today, we would piece it together. You know, it would be like bolted together, and it would be 5 different pieces, six with a lid. They cut out the inside of that. They hollowed it out, and to your point, they made it like perfectly smooth, perfect 90-degree angles, perfectly polished. We have no idea how that was done. No. I mean, I don't know that we could do that today without heavy machinery and incredible tools. tools.
We don't have any tool that can duplicate that right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So then what's your theory on like how they were like taking the lids and even because the lids, how much do the lids weigh? Like 100 tons or something?
Yeah, 100 tons, 200 tons, some 500 tons, depending on which box it is.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, and so, but if you understand that they're so massive on the inside, I've been inside these boxes physically. I've gotten standing inside of them. Well, there's enough space in there possibly for a human body and then also some equipment. There could have been a resonant frequency generator that maybe, like you say, could generate a frequency that could lighten the weight of the lid. Maybe a magnetic tool of some type, electromagnetic tool that can reverse the polarity of the atoms in the lid and allow it to become slightly lighter so they can force it open.
Okay.
There could have been several different things that they could have utilized to try to get that lid open. We just don't know which one it was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a crazy site. And I know Chris Dunn's done a ton of really, he did a bunch of work back there and really kind of brought that to like to the world to see and to question and to be like, what's really going on.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for his work, we might not be talking about it.
True.
True. It's like he was
I've
really
been reading his book, his first book. I mean, I've been studying Chris Dunn's research for years.
Yeah.
Highly respected guy.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of the other things I wanted to talk to you about were the whole UFO UAP phenomenon, get your thoughts on that, and then, maybe a handful of other topics. But why don't we start there, man? Like, I mean, I guess just from a, let's again, maybe a good place to start is kind of base reality, what's real and what's not real, and then I'm kind of interested in diving into some of the whole government, component of it. But from your standpoint, I mean, what's happening?
Well, I believe that UFOs exist. I mean, the whole thing that got me on this path to begin with was the fact that I saw a UFO in 1977 in my backyard. It wasn't in the yard, it was in the sky, but it was what I perceived to be something that I couldn't identify.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, I was just standing in my backyard playing around and looking up at the sky because we live next to a private airport called the Opa-locka Airport in Miami, in unincorporated Dade. And it would just amaze me that a plane could, I know in my mind it's got to be moving fast to maintain itself in the sky, but airspeed has to be a certain number to maintain without falling. But this object was just moving so fast, so much faster than what an airplane can move. And so I'm looking at these airplanes and I'm like, wow, it's amazing that they can move that slow, but I know they're going fast. And then all of a sudden this thing came and went right across the sky. Completely silent. It was almost like an egg, but not quite egg, slightly less than elongated. And then it just came back and it stopped. And this time when it stopped, it was much lower. Now I can estimate probably about 200 meters above me.
So closer to like a sphere than a Tic Tac, you would say. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. But
glowing metal.
Okay.
I don't know if it's metal, but it was glowing like metal. It was like steel that was somehow had this luminescence coming off of it.
Like silver color?
Silver.
Okay.
Yeah, silver. Okay. And then it just went ding. The way that it came in the opposite way. And it just completely silent and just, I mean, when I say it's gone, it's gone. I ran in the house. I was like, oh my God, I just saw this thing in the backyard. I don't know what it was. I didn't know about UFOs in the 70s. I didn't know about aliens. I knew about nothing. All I knew was what I saw didn't have a cockpit, tail fin, wings, and so I just knew that it wasn't an airplane.
And how close did it get to you?
About 200 meters above me.
200 meters above you. And it wasn't like right above you, or was it like...
It was like in a slight angle. So I'm looking up like this in an angle away from my face, maybe about 45-degree angle, and I'm looking at it, and it's just there, and it's completely stopped.
And how big would you say?
I would say now, knowing at my age now, something that distance, looking that big, it probably had to be at least, I would say, the size of a city bus.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my perspective, at least. Maybe it could have been smaller, maybe it could have been bigger, but around that size.
And when it zipped off, and when it did it disappear, or was it like an insanely fast acceleration?
Just insanely fast.
Okay.
I mean, faster than the first time I saw it. When I saw it, it went across the horizon.
Yeah.
But when it went back this way to the right, it just went. It was just gone.
Yeah.
It was like almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
And I was
straight line or arc? Or
straight line.
Straight line.
Yeah. And I was like, what the heck? My mom said, advanced beings exist. She didn't say aliens. She just said advanced beings. And then she told me about Machu Picchu. She said that in ancient times, there used to be advanced beings that lived at the tops of these mountains. And she said everything that's here already existed. She said there's nothing new under the sun, which is a quote from Ecclesiastes in the Bible. I was like, wow, this is in the 70s.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that was shocking for me to hear and understand. And then much later, realizing how impactful that statement she made to me was, because it helped also drive me to research what that was. And I went to my elementary school the next day, and I told the teacher I had to get to the library to go look at the Encyclopedia Britannica. And when I went to the library, I asked the lady, how can I find information on airplanes? She said, got to go to aerospace. So I got the aerospace version of the encyclopedias out, and I started looking into aerospace, and I never stopped researching since then.
Nice. Yeah. You're obviously a very open-minded person.
Yeah.
You know, you're obviously like highly intelligent. You know, you got a really high IQ. I know. You know, we talked about that a little bit, but obviously you're incredibly intelligent, but you're also very open-minded.
Yeah.
Do you think that has anything to do with them either showing themselves to you or you having the ability to see it in the first place? I mean, there's all these skeptics walking around with their heads looking at the ground, you know, totally closed-minded, like just like little like sheep. I mean, they're never going to see anything like that, you know. But do you think that has anything to do with it, or do you think it's just, you know, completely random?
You know, I don't know if it has anything to do with my aptitude, but what they could have seen, if you were an advanced race, and maybe you have access to time crystals, or maybe you can see future realities, how they unfold, or maybe you just want to nudge humanity in a specific direction, and you analyze me and you figure out this is the guy that at some point in the future is going to have the capability. If we send him down this path, he's going to have the capability of reaching the world. Maybe that they showed themselves to influence me to go and move in that direction. Maybe it's a little nudge part of the process that we're under here with you know, being guided and courted and engaged with and everything else. It's a possibility that they had they can see time unfolding if I went down that path, and it's unfolded to the point where I'm at now, where I'm talking to the world. I'm hitting a percentage of the world on a daily basis. A percentage of the world hears my voice every single day. So it's possible that they had that insight.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I saw one too. I saw it was a big triangle, just a massive black triangle. It was probably the size of like 4 airplanes. I talked about it with the Snake Bros for a second too on that episode. But yeah, my wife saw it too. We were sitting outside, and a friend of ours. We were all sitting outside, and you know, it was probably 10 o'clock at night, and I just look up, and there's this big, massive. It's like there's this orange light in the bottom part of the middle of it, like this weird orange. You know, like almost like from what's coming out of like these pyramids that we got up there, you know, but it's like controlled light. There's no glare, there's no like anything, and it's this massive black triangle, and it's just like kind of floating across the sky, and just, you know, so. Again, I don't know if it's UFO or if it's reverse, you know, if it's alien or if it's reverse technology or what it might be, you know, but huge and completely silent, and just seemed to appear like because, you know, I'd been looking up and looking around, like that's what we were doing. Like it was just a beautiful night. We were just like sitting up there, like looking at the sky. It was perfectly clear. At that part of the sky, there were actually clouds over to the left, and it kind of went underneath the cloud level. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't 10,000 feet. It was below that. I mean, it was well below that. And so you could see it really clearly, you know, and we all just kind of watched it float underneath the clouds and kind of disappeared behind this oak tree. And I got up and started, you know, trying to follow it or whatever, but it just disappeared. No sound. And this was not moving fast. This was moving maybe 100 miles per hour or something like that.
That's really slow.
Yeah, really slow. Yeah.
Damn.
And so, you know, I could see it. It was just one of those crazy, like, life-changing experiences that you have that's like, you know, it kind of puts you down a different path. Like, it kind of alters your path a little bit when you experience something like that. That's like that mind-opening, that like eye-opening. That's like, what is going on? And you know, I'll take a lie detector test. My wife, you know, she saw it too. Like, I've got, you know, another friend that saw it. Like, it was there. I mean, there was something massive in the sky that was just this huge black triangle. And I've seen, you know, thousands of planes, tens of thousands of planes. This wasn't a plane. Like,
we know the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we live near the Sarasota. You know, the planes fly over our house from Sarasota Airport. All, you know, it's not, it's not.
So
not
you live
stupid.
next to an airport. I live next to an airport.
Yeah.
We both saw UFOs.
Right.
It's really strange.
Yeah.
Now they're calling them UAPs.
Right. Yeah.
Well, some are theirs, some are ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on it? Like, I mean, so you think that some of it is extraterrestrial. So do you think it's interdimensional? Do you think it's straight up like other coming from other planets? Like, what are your thoughts in terms of?
I think that we're seeing potentially three phenomenon.
Okay.
One is UFOs or UAPs, but unidentified objects that are from other planets, that are from outside of this Earth planet. That's one. The other one we may be seeing is a multidimensional, right? Something from a higher dimension that is peering into our dimension, so we can't even perceive sometimes its true shape or form. And if you have the ability technologically to analyze the subatomic frequency of a dimension and to phase shift your frequency to match, you may be able to walk right into that dimension or transfer or transcend into that dimension. So that would, and then you could have also maybe some level of paranormal activity that maybe we just can't detect. So there could be several different things happening all at once. I believe that we're living in a universe that's full of life. And I think that spacefaring races are pretty standard. I'm talking about people like us that have the capability of reaching space. People, any kind of sentient being that has hands that can manipulate the environment. Eventually, I believe that we'll seek the ability to get off planet. It just makes sense because we know that geological disasters happen. We know that civilizations rise and fall. I think it's pretty standard. And the next best thing to do would be to create a breakaway civilization to maintain, your species, to keep it going. So I think everyone naturally, that's the next natural step.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there could be also multidimensional, even transdimensional beings that could be peering in from time to time, because I think that in every dimension, there's life. And some may be very curious about what it's like to be in the third dimension. And our perception of them could be skewed. We could be perceiving them from only a sliver of reality, because once you go from a higher dimension down into like our dimension, you can only perceive a sliver. For example, if you were a one-dimensional being or a two-dimensional being and I came from the third dimension, you'd only be able to see black dots or lines of me. You wouldn't be able to perceive me as a human being, right? So if I put my finger down into your world, you'd only see a circle form on the ground out of nowhere. The circle came out of nowhere. But what about the rest of me?
Right.
You can't perceive it because I'm in a higher dimension. And so I think that could be some of the things that we're also,
Okay.
I think there's life just abundantly everywhere in every dimension.
So do I.
Yeah.
So government-wise, I mean, I guess maybe we start with reverse engineering. I mean, like what are your thoughts on that, and how long has that been happening? Do you think it's been like a Roswell kind of since then, kind of a thing, or?
I think it's before Roswell.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
These craft have been coming here for a very, very long time, according to ancient texts. Now, more recently, meaning like in the early 1900s, Germany, I believe, were the first ones to come across a couple of these fallen devices and began to try to reverse engineer them. They even then traveled around the world trying to gain more knowledge on these devices. They put together a group of people who can channel information from aliens on how to build these devices. They were obsessed with building these advanced, aerospace vehicles, which they did eventually begin to build some. Now, during Project Paperclip World War II, the United States took over 2,000 Nazis and brought them to America. It wasn't just a few scientists. They brought over 2,000 Nazis to America. We became the Fourth Reich, so to speak. Put them in places and positions of science and NASA, well, at that time, NACA. The CIA was just beginning to form, put some people in there for intelligence purposes, and all the scientists. And we began to utilize their knowledge on how to find these things. And I believe that we got the knowledge on how to bring them down from them.
Okay.
And it's using some type of a scalar weapon. I think that they knew that scalar frequency disrupted their navigation system and make them crash. So we began to do the same thing they were doing, bringing them down by disorienting the ships and then going and recovering the crashed ships and then reverse engineering them.
Okay.
I believe that's the process.
Okay. So so that was prior to. So we use this technology during Roswell. You think to bring those craft down?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's what we did.
Yeah.
And so now you're reverse engineering these craft, and a lot of new inventions came from this reverse engineering, which made it into mainstream society. Fiber optics, Velcro, and all these things that have been rumored to come out of these craft, microchips and so forth.
The laser, right?
The laser. All these things come out of this reverse engineering of these craft, and they've gotten really good now at producing these to the point where they're indistinguishable from what we would call a UFO. And I believe that they're going to probably, just like everyone has said, put out a fake attack on the United States, probably a naval ship. And the reason why, why would they do that? Well, we've gone to every country. We've already pretty much decimated everyone and brought democracy to the world.
Right.
We've taken all their resources, right? We've put all the puppet dictators in place. What's left to do? There's nothing left on Earth to do. We've taken over all the banks. The only thing left is space. So we create the Space Force, right, which is a space farce in my opinion. And now we have the capability of saying we need trillions of dollars to fund the Space Force. We don't have to hide it anymore in Pentagon. The Pentagon is now accountable. The money's there. Now you guys can see it. And we don't have a war, so we need money. How do we make money? We fake an attack. So you might see one of these ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, attack a U.S. vessel, and now it's an alien attack, and now we need trillions and trillions of dollars to go into private industry so that we can get R&D on how to make space weapons to protect ourselves. And that's going to funnel trillions of dollars into those private corporations, most of which some of these poly tricksters are sitting on the board of directors of. They're going to make a lot of submarine money off of these things. Some of these inventions will never come out, never see the light of day. A lot of them will never even come to fruition because, Lockheed Martin, all these companies, Northrop Grumman, they have a bad reputation of taking billions of dollars, saying they're going to produce something like a jet. The jet is kind of created, kind of not. It never flies or test flies a couple times. Oh, we need a few more billion, 10 more years. We need a couple more billion. We might get it right. And then after another 5 years, scrap it. It's not going to work. Let's go to the next one. And they do this to drain this revenue and keep everybody paid. And the big execs are getting these huge, huge paychecks. And the board is getting paid. It's a wealth building process off of potential fake wars. And so they're going to do the same thing with the Space Force.
So, I mean, so currently and for the last 75 years, there's been black budget funds. I mean, funding that has gone to these programs that have been just not accounted for, and now we're losing I don't know how many millions of dollars a year in funds that are going to these companies and through the Pentagon. I mean, the Pentagon hasn't passed an audit, in years and
they
years.
Never
and years.
passed an audit,
right. And so the money's going somewhere. It's very likely going into these black budget programs, and that's what Congress is having these hearings, and that's why they're looking into this, because they're responsible for the U.S. taxpayers' dollar and to know where this money is going. So it's happening. I mean, we're doing something, and NASA is studying something. They come out and say, hey, we're studying this UAP phenomenon. I mean, they're telling us it's real now. I mean, the government's telling us it's real. So. So I mean, kind of, so you're saying that as this whole thing continues to unfold, and they're going to want more and more money, they're going to want more and more taxpayer dollars, that they're going to be able to then come forward and say, look, we have these programs, or maybe they'll say, forget about those programs, but we're going to start a new program, and and then they'll be able to fund it with the American people knowing about it. And it'll be because of this slow disclosure and allowing the American people to convincing the American people that it's real and that the phenomenon is real and that there's a threat. I mean, the phenomenon is real. Whether or not there's a threat, you're saying that's what the United States government is going to try to convince people of, that there's a threat from this alien civilization and that they're attempting to attack us, and that we need to be able to protect ourselves. And so,
because they're under a lot of pressure right now with all these congressional hearings and everything, and a lot of these programs operating with no congressional oversight. Nobody seems to know what the other one's doing. And there's a lot of pressure from senators and everything right now. So all of a sudden, the best way to just seal this and close it and start something fresh is to just create a situation where we've got an attack. There's a real threat, and this threat needs to be resolved, and it's going to be resolved by letting us take this money. You guys are going to ask us no more questions. We will tell you that we're using it to create a defense, but we're not going to tell you what that defense actually is. That's going to be top secret. And now you guys be quiet, just keep giving us this money as we fight this invisible war.
Yeah, that top secret thing with the National Security Act, you know, it's like that came out. So the National Security Act was created like 3 weeks after Roswell, after the Roswell incident. They created this National Security Act. And so now they're able to unconstitutionally keep facts away from the American people, keep legitimate, like what's going on. They're able to say, oh, national security, can't tell you. That happened 3 weeks after the Roswell crash. And they've been using national security as it relates to this topic ever since for the last 75 years, plus 77 years. I mean, it's crazy. And people don't realize that. And the CIA was created just a couple of weeks after that.
That's right.
To house all of this information and data. So, yeah, man, I mean, people don't realize how it's so obvious when you step back and you just look at what's happening, what's going on. But you're thinking that the next logical step to keep taking more of our money, to keep taking more of the taxpayer dollars is to make people convinced that there is a threat. Any idea when? You know, I mean, it could take years, I'm sure. It could take
years. It just depends on how much pressure they're feeling with all of these hearings and all of this, all the people trying to come forward in government to talk about these UAPs, and now people are coming forward saying that we have bodies not of this world, we have ships not of this world, and the more pressure and the more they have to try to cover up and make these people look like they're crazy and discredit them. Eventually, they're going to get to a point. This is just too much, man. Let's just fake an attack, and then we got the green light. Because once you get people afraid, you can mold them to do anything you want. They know this, the fear tactic, and so they'll just create the fear, and then they'll just take the money. I think I don't know what time frame that'll be in. But man, we're getting kind of close.
I mean, it kind of depends on like whistleblowers and how people come out and what information is out there. Like David Grush pushed that timing.
He
up.
pushed it. He pushed it hard.
Pushed it up.
That's why I'm saying it could be soon. Another Gulf of Tonkin incident is getting ready to hit us. You know, they lied about that attack in the Gulf of Tonkin to create the Vietnamese War. And just this is history repeating itself, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we create all these weapons. It becomes a business. It becomes an industry. It's like the war machine. Like we have to keep funding it. You know, we can't have negative growth. We can't have this. You know, we have to use these weapons. We can't just make them. They're going to expire. They're going to go bad. What a waste of money. Let's create a war somewhere. Let's it's sick.
It's sick. It's really dark and demented, twisted.
It really is.
It's pretty bad.
It's really bad. Yeah, the current state of humanity, which is why you're so passionate about consciousness and awakening, and you know that. It's love where you're going, love where your head's at. Love how you're helping people kind of understand, you know, a bit more about what's going on out there. You know, it's really, I mean, just that one thing, that one thing of consciousness and you know, making progress towards that as a species can so much just reduce the violence and the hatred and the trauma and just all the negativity and just, you know, throughout the world. So again, really appreciate it.
Thank you. If you can imagine a young person, because I'm really targeting a lot of the younger crowd. All of a sudden, you know, they start to hear some of the things I'm talking about, and they begin to change the way they perceive themselves in the world. And now all of a sudden, they're not going to join the military. So they can take those orders to go fly halfway around the world and blow up a guy riding a Campbell with a $5 million bomb. You know, so they can get college credits. It's not going to happen. And so it's just a method of slowly infiltrating from the inside of each person's individual mind and getting them to see themselves in the world in a different way.
Yeah, I love it. Very good.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the pole shift.
Yeah. So when I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at like, and you can Google this, and you Google North Magnetic Pole, and you can see what's happened over the last 100 plus years. You see that the thing has kind of bounced around a little bit. You know, it's kind of, you know, for you know, about 100 years, it was moving around, you know, kind of figuring out what it wanted to do, and then since like 1990, it's just like hauling ass. I mean, in just a straight line. Yeah, there it is, Ryan. I mean, it's moving super far past toward past the North Magnetic Pole, and it's just going straight to Russia. And you see the South Magnetic Pole doing kind of the same thing. I mean, it's not like as extreme on the South right now, but it's very, very similar. And what it looks like to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like they're heading towards each other.
Yeah.
Like they're going in the same direction. And the opposite point on the globe to where it looks like they're going is where we see that South Atlantic anomaly.
Yeah.
And so, that South Atlantic anomaly, like if we looked at a globe, that thing exists between Africa and South America. And it's obviously this super weak spot in the magnetic field.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's going on? Like if the North and South Magnetic Pole are firing towards a place that's opposite of that, and that's growing and forming and getting larger, like how does that end?
Yeah.
Yes. So
well, this is part of the cycle of our planet. If you look at some of the ancient records, they talk about shifts in the planet's surface, and also they begin to reference, they don't say magnetic field, but they call it the Earth's force changing.
Okay.
So they even knew of this. And now we're looking at, with our modern eyes and our modern technology, we can see that the Earth's magnetic field is set for a flip. Now, if you go to volcanic rocks, they actually harness and hold the Earth's magnetic prior field inside of them for 27,000 years. You can go all the way back in time in these volcanic rocks, and you can see that the orientation of Earth's magnetic field was reversed than what it is right now. So we know that we're actually a little bit overdue, to be honest with you, for the next flip. So we're beginning to see the very beginning stages of Earth's magnetic field beginning to do a complete polar flip. And it is racing towards Russia. It's actually almost over Russia right now, the north magnetic north. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the airlines have had to change the coordinates on their runways so that the airplanes can land properly because they're basing it on magnetic north. And as it continues to move, they'll have to continue to change the coordinates for runways. So it's really affecting us in a real way. And eventually it will flip. Now, some people get afraid of that, like what's going to happen? Well, it's not going to kill us, but it will disrupt a lot of technology. Okay, GPS systems, tracking devices, so many things that do rely on Earth's magnetic field, and it also will affect animals. Birds that navigate on the field, turtles that swim back to shore, and so forth and so on. Now, they will adjust because they've adjusted for millions of years, but it's going to be a little bit of a transitional process before they fully adjust. And so there will be an effect to life on Earth as we know it when it does flip, but it will guaranteed flip. Now, what's causing this movement? What's interesting is scientists discovered that there is a massive object orbiting our sun. Astrophysicists, astronomers now all agree that they found something in what they call the inner Oort cloud region. In other words, it's part of our solar system, but it's not part of the inner solar system. It's like they say their exact words, a solar system within a solar system, that there's this other thing out there. They believe it's a brown dwarf, which is a sun that's not as big and bright as our white star. It's kind of a star that's operating in a much lower frequency, but the same density as our sun.
Wow.
And it has planets orbiting it.
Not the same gravity, same density?
Same gravity.
Same gravity.
Density and gravity match.
Okay.
But it's just about 4 to 6 times smaller.
Okay.
And it has planets orbiting it. And it's way out there, far beyond Pluto, and it orbits our sun every 4,200 years, according to them. And so this is interesting because as it orbits our sun, the magnetic fields and the gravitational fields begin to intertwine. And I believe that when this thing comes around, it has different distances of approach. Just like Mars sometimes is 80 million miles away, and sometimes it's only 30 million miles away, right, in apogee or perigee. Well,
so
this
elliptical orbit.
Right,
yeah.
Same situation. So all of a sudden, this thing on its closest approach could really tug at the magnetic field of Earth and even our sun and create more solar storms, create CMEs, coronal mass ejections, could wreak havoc throughout our entire solar system as it does orbit our sun every 4,200 years. And depending on the distance it is, how many AUs, astronomical units away it is from our sun, well, that's going to affect the amount of catastrophes that we may or may not have. And I think that is the harbinger that's creating this magnetic field flip.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So I mean,
that's a hypothesis.
Yeah. Other hypothesis is like am I right? Like the iron core of the Earth potentially stopping rotating.
It could be flipping. It's an iron core that's spinning and has a specific amount of RPM, and it could roll over. It could roll over. I mean, there's no way to control how this thing is exactly spinning. It's not like spinning perfect on its own axis, and it could roll and spin and pivot from time to time, which also could create a flip in Earth's magnetic field. And of course, then we have the tectonic plate movement, which is a different type of pole shift, which is a pole shift of the crust of the Earth.
Right.
Which is why Antarctica is in the position it is right now. I believe that Antarctica was probably further north up into the Atlantic and then shifted into that spot at a very rapid pace. And the reason why is because we know that according to the Perry-Reese map, we can see what Antarctica looked like before the ice. And if we know what it looked like before the ice, that couldn't have been too long ago.
Right.
Somebody saw this continent before this ice formed. And also, now that it's beginning to melt because of global warming, animals are getting defrosted and they're cutting them open and finding undigested food in their throats and their stomachs. Now, how can an animal have undigested food not fully swallowed?
Right.
This is flash frozen.
Yeah, that's immediately frozen.
We're talking about a tectonic plate that shifted and a huge mass of land moving into position, which also would have caused another global flood. Because that would have, you're moving around mass in a bowl of water, all of a sudden that water's going to splash all over the place. Same exact thing happened there too. So it's pretty crazy, but I think that Antarctica and the evidence of the animals there is clear evidence, and the ice is clear evidence of a pole shift of the crust, which I believe is another thing that's going to happen to us again in the future. There will be another slippage, a mass slippage at some point, and one continent could move, who knows, 15, 20 degrees in a very short period of time.
Yeah, so important distinguishment, obviously. The first thing we're talking about was the magnetic pole shift, and you think that while it will disrupt communications technology, animals, that it's not going to be as the magnetic poles flip, that it's not going to be a threat to civilization, that it's not going to be, right.
We'll adjust.
Yeah, we'll adjust, we'll be fine, but that a geographic shift, that's going to be much more, that's going to be much more devastating.
That's going to devastate some people. That's going to kill a lot of people.
Yeah. And the magnetic field shift, we have those documented every, a couple of 100,000 years. I think the last one wasn't for like 500, 600, 700,000 years ago, maybe something like that.
Yeah, well, there was one account where they saw a slip or a flip of the magnetic field 27,000 years ago.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
Magnetic rock. And volcanic rock.
Yeah,
they detected a 27,000-year-old flip in the magnetic field in these volcanic rocks.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, and it's not as if this is science fiction. I mean, we know this happens. Like this is
real fact. It's just fact of life. It's a cycle of life, nature.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things. What's gonna, you mentioned the CMEs. It's like, what's gonna get us for, we got artificial intelligence, we got pulse shifts, we got climate, we got CMEs, we got nuclear weapons, we got, so many things.
Things.
Yeah, it's time to get conscious real quick. And I mean, the CME conversation is interesting too. We might as well touch on that for a second, because corona mass ejection, the last major corona mass ejection was 1859. And that was the Carrington event.
Right.
And that was right when the telegram was coming up online.
Burnt them out.
Burn them all out. Yeah. It's like, we got this great new technology, all these poles and these wires on it, and they all just melted because of this massive solar storm.
I know.
Yeah. And it's like if that were to happen today, just a solar storm, just of that magnitude, all the power grids are melted.
They're done.
Just gone. And then our civilization is gone.
Gone.
I mean, humans might survive in pockets, but civilization as we know it without power is gone, because we're completely hooked up to the food supply and the water supply. I mean, we've poisoned all the clean waterways all over the planet. We can't drink that water.
Can't drink it.
We're all hooked on this bottled water and purified water, which we won't get. And there's too many animals. There's more humans than there are animals to be able to find food from. We don't plant food-bearing trees or, you know, native food-bearing trees. We plant pretty trees that we need to pump water out of the ground to water. I mean, our civilization is like, what are we doing, guys?
It's wild.
Like, it's wild. And we're so fragile, and nobody realizes how fragile we are, and just connected to this supply chain, this global supply chain network that is just like, it's so fragile, and it's just all connected to the power grid. And the power grid, everybody thinks is, you know, there's nothing that can happen to it. I mean, there could be like hackers from Russia, China that shut down our 3 power grids. I mean,
we're done.
And done. I mean, our civilization's done. But I mean, if a solar storm, even one, and supposedly it's like a 1 every 100 year type of event. I mean, different scientists think different things. I had a call with the director of Homeland Security, and you know, I was on a direct call with him through the National Retail Federation, and I asked him, you know, have you ever heard of CMEs? And because part of his job is to protect from natural disasters and all disasters. He's like, nope. And I'm like, dude, this is the director of Homeland Security. And so like I went into it. Like I'm like, if we had another Carrington event now and that happened and our power grids went down, you know, we're screwed. And like you could protect our country from that if you knew what, you know, that this was a possibility. He had no idea. And like, you know, and he's like, oh yeah, I'll follow up on it. You know, it's like, okay. Paul,
doesn't surprise me.
You
know,
so,
doesn't surprise. Humanity is living in an illusion of security.
No doubt.
We're on the precipice of disaster at any given moment.
100%.
I remember I was tracking this gigantic asteroid called Apophis, and it was due to come by Earth. I don't know if it was 2013 or 2014. And this thing is massive. And it came around, but they didn't even say anything about it. And I had been tracking it because I was studying astrophysics books. And they didn't say anything about it until it passed by because they didn't want people to get scared. I believe that it slipped through what they call a gravitational keyhole. And the next time it approaches in about 2036, it can come really close to Earth, like really directly affect us. And there's a couple more that are huge out there that are also sometimes swinging by and come in between the Earth and the Moon. They don't tell you until it's gone, of course. There's so many potential disasters and hazards out there. Did you know that our moon has a second object that's orbiting along with it around our planet?
I heard something about that recently.
There's another gigantic rock out there that's orbiting in this very strange, crazy orbit that's being tugged along by the moon. And all that thing has to do is get bumped by something out there, and it's coming right for us. So there's so many things that can take us out. It's amazing. But we've only been here, you know, for less than a blink of an eye on geological timescales. So we don't understand like this small window that we've been given to prosper here. And if we can really come together and unite and begin, like I say, again, I have to say it, love one another and understand how to grow our technology spiritually, we can create breakaway civilizations. We can avert geological disasters. We can do these things together. But as long as we stay separated, we're just another generation or another, you know, who knows, few years away from getting obliterated. We have to figure out how to work together so that we can get past and we can do it. We can get past these disasters. Either by breakaway civilizations or averting disaster by creating technology that can stop them. But as long as we're competing against each other nonstop,
fighting with each other, putting all our resources towards weapons and war and fighting and as opposed to working with each other as a species. Put
that $100 billion from the military-industrial complex per year into, you know, learning how to move and shift the orbit of comets and asteroids and things like that. You know,
100%. Yeah, it's powerful, and it's the right direction, and it comes with the recognition that, again, you know, these artificial identifications that we're given as children, that you know, it's like these country lines. You go up into space, you don't see these country lines.
The lines don't exist.
They don't exist. They're not there.
Imaginary lines. You're an alien. If you walk across this line, I'm going to arrest you.
Like what? Like what are we doing?
I know. I know.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. But but I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate the light that you are spreading and bringing bringing to the human consciousness, the human species. It's it's amazing. There need to be more people like you out there, and hopefully, people listening to this podcast, hopefully it inspires some people to do their own research. To open up their mind to the possibility of what could happen. If we look at things a little bit differently, if we stop carrying the past into the present, if we if we unite as a people, we stop competing with each other, and we start working with each other. What could our future actually look like? Because right now, it's not looking so good, right?
Yeah. We have to start working with each other. We have to collaborate and coordinate and organize.
Right.
And share resources, man.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a reason why, I'm living in this house and I can go 4 miles down the street and see a person begging on the corner.
Right.
We have to start thinking, how can we begin to become problem solvers? How can we solve problems? We see the problems, we can talk about them because we have to, but we can't just talk about them. We have to begin to realize, how can we either collaborate with someone or come up with ideas by ourselves to begin to fix and solve problems. And if people become more thinkers and doers instead of just seers and complainers, we can convert this planet.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, awesome, man. Let's leave it at that.
All right, man.
Yeah. It's such a good conversation. It's so great to meet you. I feel like I've known you forever.
Same here. Yeah.
Just talking to you, it's been amazing. Been a breath of fresh air to talk to you, hear your perspective. Absolutely love it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Don't worry about the people that they're trying to build their name up by talking about you. Don't, you just gotta keep being you, keep doing you, keep pushing past all of that craziness. They're just trying to build themselves up off of your name, and it's you're doing the right thing. You're helping people. I mentioned to you last night. I mean, I know one of my good friends was she's like, well, you're talking to Billy Carson, like he changed my life. He totally opened me up to she was able to pull herself out of a very, very difficult position in her life and really transcend it and rise above it because of just listening to you, and your podcast. And so why don't we close with where can people find you?
Yeah. Well, you can go to forbiddenknowledge.com with the number 4. So 4BIDDEN knowledge.com. Also 4BK.tv. That's 4BK, 3 letters, .tv. And I've got a streaming TV network there with over 3,000 shows. And all the information about me, all our social media links, YouTube accounts, and everything is all linked right there.
Love it.
Thank you.
Awesome, man. Well, can't thank you enough for coming on and talking to me, man. Had a great time.
Thank you.
So, yes, sir. Good stuff.
All right.
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
Yeah, it was good, man.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a good one.
Yeah, love it. Love you.